Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee. This has been live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I'll refer to them formally using their title, e.g. Councillor Smith, so that it's clear who are councillors and who, by the process of elimination, are officers. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute, and if you're in the hall, you could do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be taken by roll call, and if any member has reason to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then rejoin when you rejoin the meeting. This is in order that we can make sure that the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking time speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Claire, could you provide the sediment indicating who is participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've got 9 members present in the hall this morning, being yourself, the Vice Chair, Councillor John Campbell, Councillor Dorward, Johnston, Slater, Stevenson, Thompson and Wilson. We have 8 members present on Teams, being Councillors Brodie, Dookie Campbell, Davis, Howie, Ingalls, Lowe, McGregor and Marsh. Received apologies from Councillors Beretti this morning, and 3 members currently not present, being Councillors Ian Crothers, Councillor Hagman and Councillor Marshall. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Do any members have any declarations of interest or statement of connections? No. Item 3, the minute of the previous meeting. This is for noting. And before I start the meeting with the... Oh, sorry, Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. It's just to note that I am here. I don't know why Claire didn't have me on the list of councillors present, but I am here, clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. That's been noted. Before I start the meeting with the first substantive item at number 4 on the agenda, I'd like to suggest that the E&I Committee formally thank of the staff who take part in the response and recovery phases of the severe storm that took place on Friday the 24th of January and over that weekend and throughout the next week, in fact. The dedication and motivation of the staff involved was outstanding in unusually harsh conditions. In addition to the staff involved on the ground, there were also a significant contribution by staff members working tirelessly behind the scenes, and I feel it's only right that we recognise the considerable effort that was made. I would ask you to join me in thanking all the staff involved. Thank you. I've got to item 4, Economy and Infrastructure Revenue Budget Monitoring Report 24-25 for the period ended 31st December 2024. This report provides members with an overview of the performance against the budget for the period ending 31st December 2024, that's the end of quarter 3, for the economy and infrastructure for the financial year. Tam Alder is available to take any questions on the report along with other officers as may be required. Members, I'll open up to questions. Councillor Wilson. My apologies, my glasses were steaming up. Lloyd, go ahead, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. On the subject of the ASN transport, which I think we all know is something we need to tackle, that's up another 226k from Q2. And despite the 750k we've already put in, there's a projected overspend of 600.
Sorry, can I interrupt you just for a second? The volume's very low for some reason. Could I ask you either to bring the mic in or if we could turn the volume up? My apologies for interrupting you, but I just couldn't hear it all. Okay, would you like to try again? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. No, I agree, the volume is very, very low. I was struggling as well. So yeah, on the projected overspend for the ASN, it's up another 226k from Q2, and despite the 750k, there's a projected overspend of 626k by the end of financial year. Now, it's been discussed at this committee before, and we were told that there was plans in place to look at this and what, ideas of what they would do, but the number of ASN pupils isn't going down, it's going up. So what are we doing to tackle this? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. So yeah, there's considerable work going on in the background at the moment. We're testing a number of things to see if that will bring the costs down. So a lot of testing and learning taking place. The intention is that we're testing a number of those things over the summer period, and we intend to bring a report back to this committee at the end of this academic year to outline what has worked, what things, what learning there may be, and where we feel the position will be moving forward once we've got a better understanding of some of those projects that we're testing currently.
Councillor Stevenson, does that answer your point? Yeah. I think it's only fair to say that this item, I think I've raised this before, that I appreciate that someone somewhere in the council has to pay for this service, but I still feel that this should be maybe aligned further with education, because I think you're always tempted to look further into making cuts, not so much cuts, but making efficiencies, savings, if you're directly involved in it. It's not a matter for today, but I think that's still something we should be looking at. Councillor Dorward.
Good morning, members. Thank you, Chair, and totally agree with your earlier remarks about the hard work the council staff done and our communities have done in terms of getting us back to a degree of normality after that horrendous storm. So join you in saying thanks to them all. A question on timings, basically around page 26, 4.4, the MDT facility at Locher Moss, and talking about ongoing minor mechanical failures resulting in a net, not a gross, but a net overspend of 630k. What it also mentions is a catastrophic failure, which catastrophic for me refers to a sudden, severe and unforeseen malfunction or breakdown where a system or component leads to significant negative consequences over the festive season at the MDT plant. So that's over and above the minor mechanical failures that are costing us 630k. So question in terms of timings on that is, I know that we are going to be no longer utilising this at some point in time, and they're talking about accelerating, the council's talking about accelerating that process so we don't have to incur these massive catastrophic mechanical failures. What are the timescales for that? Can these be actually increased? Can they be speeded up? And why were we not officially informed of this when it happened? Because it's a catastrophic failure. So we were only made aware of this when these papers were issued. Was that an oversight on the administration's part? Thank you.
Lisa, would you like to come?
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. I'll invite Alan Mawson in a few minutes just to answer the more detailed elements of your question. But with regards to notifying members, I guess in terms of catastrophic failure, it means it's simply that boa belt needs a full replacement in order for us to continue the operation. So we've had, failures that you might consider to be significant in the past that have required replacement of equipment. It's just that on this occasion it doesn't make sense to replace it because it's going to stop being used as part of the Zero Waste Park Phase 1 work that's due to commence in April. But it might be worth just bringing Alan Mawson in, the Head of Service, to give some more detail around that.
Yeah, just before I bring Alan into this, I have been kept informed about the progress of this. It's one of these breakdowns that started off smaller and grew. I think also the lead time in the replacement parts is such that it would make it impractical by the time they were specially ordered from abroad and brought in, and manufactured, brought in, that we would be dismantling that system anyway. So I think that's the progress. But we're certainly, it's not an oversight. We've been very well informed by the director and the team. Alan, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think just a bit of background is useful on that specific element of the MBT plant. So the bore conveyor is part of the refinements area that will no longer be utilised as part of the Dumfries Zero Waste site. The breakdown occurred, as highlighted, pre-Christmas. And that then undertook during the festive period a bit of time to get engineers on site during the festive time and the breakdown to do an assessment of the actual impact of what that how severe that was going to be. That took place in the return from the festive period from January over a night shift, so it didn't disturb the operating of the MBT plant. And the findings for that are still to be formally finalised, but ultimately the review assessed that the requirement would be it would take significant manufacturing of bespoke pieces of equipment that would bring the bore conveyor back online. And as indicated by yourself, Chair, it would take at least 12 weeks to manufacture them, and then probably another 3 to 6 weeks to actually fit them after stripping the bore conveyor down. In light of the Dumfries Zero Waste Park and that element being not required from it, we've spoken to the property team, and there's a board meeting this afternoon regarding expediting that element of the breakthrough. It's worth noting that there would have been a shutdown of that element regarding the Dumfries Zero Waste Park anyway, so the period of time that is impacting on the budget is between now and that breakthrough, and the determination is that now there's a contractor being, and I think it's elemented within the property paper later on, the contractor has been awarded for the Dumfries Zero Waste site, and we'll be looking at that phase of the element being one of the first elements through the breakthrough that then would mitigate any further additional cost associated with the bore conveyor catastrophic failure. Hopefully that helps, Chair. Happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dorwin.
Thanks, Chair. It partially answers the question, but one of the parts of my question was about the financial costs incurred for all of this, and that hasn't been answered. How much more money will we be spending on this, as well as the 630k net overspend and the 100,000k that's also included in 4.4? What is this catastrophic failure costing us? Thank you. It hasn't been. That's not in the report. That part of my question wasn't answered.
Okay. Lisa?
Yeah, we're still working through the financial consequences of that, because it partly depends on whether we're able to advance the work for Zero Waste Park Phase 1. As Alan touched on, there's a meeting this afternoon, but it also depends on the volume of waste we have coming in. So at the moment, we're actually coping okay with the volume of waste because this time of year is fairly quiet. But depending on that volume between now and that work starting will depend on the financial implications in terms of us offloading that elsewhere. So we are still working through what that might look like for end of year budget position.
You want to come back?
Thanks, Chair, for letting me come back. Appreciate that. And thanks, Director, for that explanation. When will we have an update on that, then, would be my next question. It would be good if it could be as soon as practicable. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We'll come back to you once we've got a better idea.
Okay, that's it. You come back to all members of the committee on that. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, just to further echo thanks to our teams over the stormy period, particularly the ones not just behind the scenes but out actually at the front line, clearing the roads and working with Scottish Power, etc., to re-deliver services. So it's much appreciated. Just in terms of the report itself, at 4.7, it talks about the garden waste collection scheme. I'm just wondering, could we get a figure today on the uptake for that, and what the, just a reminder of what the figure we were hoping to get was and what the figure is today. I've got a few other questions, so I don't know if you want me to go through those just in a one-hour, if you like.
I think to keep it simple, we'll deal with that one first. Alan?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so the uptake figures are just over the 4,000 as far as registration of the garden waste collection service at the moment. The full projection by the time of the end of the year is 80, was based on the consultant's report, which was estimated at 18,000. But it's worth noting, Chair, just that there's a member seminar on this on Friday. There'll be a lot of detail that'll be given out as part of that seminar on, I think it's Friday afternoon this week. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so obviously there might be, we'll have to be aware of what impacts that might be having on any predicted future revenue budgets to cover the cost of the service. Just in terms of other questions, I think it's been sort of touched on already, but in terms of the 4.12, I know we've had answers before around the one council approach to meeting the cost of this in terms of education and economy and infrastructure. And we don't, you know, I think we've established that the budget doesn't necessarily belong in one particular area, although I do align with yourself, Chair, in that it should be the client service in terms of education that pays for this. However, just in terms of the prices, so if I'm reading this correctly, there's not an additional demand as such, it's just that the cost of delivery has increased because of prices. So would it be possible to get a breakdown of that, given that it's 226k increased since the last quarter? And then I've got a couple of other questions, so you just want to do them one at a time?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Yeah, we can take a look at what we're able to provide members with. I don't have that detail today, but if you leave it with us, we can come back to members.
And just on the whether it belongs to education or E&I, is that still a joyful one council approach, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's joint one council. We have education colleagues currently chairing one of the groups that ensures we've got representation from across the two departments to look at how we make some of the improvements, but nonetheless the accountability sits with us. And I know I've said it previously, but I think we could spend time debating on where it sits, but for me it's about putting our energies jointly into trying to resolve and mitigate some of the escalating costs that we're seeing here.
Thank you. Far be it from me to disagree with the Director. We're slightly apart on this one. Yeah, I agree we've got to deal with the problem as it exists just now, but I think still in the future it's something we could look at. I'm not saying it will go ahead, but we could look at and see if there are any advantage or disadvantage in fact. Councillor Thompson, back to you.
Thanks. I'll make this my last bite at the cherry, Chair. I think it's on page 31. We're into the appendices now, and it's just on the bottom table. So it's on the transport and infrastructure one, and I'm just noticing in the actual to date column, which is the third from the right, for 31st of December 2024, some of the figures for fleet management and sustainable transport, they seem to have taken a leap to sort of split across the two lines, whereas for the rest of the table, they sort of sit kind of in line with their kind of sort of allocated budget. So I'm just sort of wondering what explains that that variation there, and will that, you know, what will bring that back in line for the next quarter? And the final one is on page 33, which is the appendix on the forecasted progress on delivery of savings. In terms of the co-locating service, which is the third line, there's a bit of narrative there because it's not likely to be achieved in the financial year as hoped. It does say it's anticipated it will be a timing delay, but do we know that it's actually happening and it's just the timing of the actual saving that's in doubt, or is it definitely happening, I suppose is the question. Thank you.
Tam, can I ask you to come in this one?
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of your first query on the actuals to date for fleet management, so at the moment there's some discussion around centralising a lot of the fleet budgets. So normally at this stage of the year, a lot of the fleet costs would have been recharged to various services, and the year-to-date actual therefore wouldn't be too high. But because there's discussions about centralising a lot of fleet budgets that are currently over a number of council services within fleet management, that's certainly something that we're looking to progress at year end. So by year end, the actuals in the budget will certainly be more back in line, as we will probably be some fleet budgets taken from other services and centralised in here so that it's easier to manage for the fleet team. In terms of the actuals and some of the other areas, you referenced sustainable transport. There are various account adjustments that we do at year end that will bring the actuals back in with the budgeted level. There's obviously still some invoices to come in. The invoicing for this area is a little behind at the moment, so that's why the actuals again look out of sync against the budget. But again, we would anticipate those come back in line for the end of the financial year. In terms of the co-locating services saving, my understanding is that the property services team is currently working on an asset rationalisation strategy that would assist in progressing some of the property related savings. Until we're sort of in a position where that's been fully developed, we wouldn't anticipate to start seeing the savings come through for the co-locating services. So that's why we've said it would be a timing issue rather than non-delivery. So hopefully once that has been progressed, we'll be able to report back to members with that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Thompson, does that answer your points?
I think in the first one I'll have to take it on faith. I suppose that the numbers will all end up back in the right place, but it just looked like you know, it's quite a significant amount. But if it's to do with internal recharges and where it belongs, etc., can accept that for now. But in terms of the co-location of services, I suppose the answer I'm wanting is, have we got one on the go, and it's just the timing of it? And I noticed Mo had come forward there to sit in the hot seat. So it was just to get clarification on, is it in progress, or is it, have we actually, are we sure we're going to get it? Thank you.
I'll bring Lisa in that one. Thank you.
So my understanding is that we have previously had a strategy, but that needs quite considerably updating and refreshing, because I believe it was either pre or just post-COVID. So we have discussed it at SLT, and the intention is to start that work in 6 months' time, just because of the significant workloads that are within that area currently, and there's need to balancing those demands.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I don't know if that really answers the question, but I don't know if I'm getting much better today. So I just wanted to know, is the 50k in the post, and we'll get it, but just in the next financial year, or is it like we've still got a bit of work to do to even identify that 50k?
I think in summary, we've still got a bit of work to do to identify that 50k.
Thank you for that. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regarding the waste at the moment and the equipment that's broken down, you say that you're able to cope at the moment, but what happens if we can't cope? What happens to the waste? Is it put to an outside contractor or other? Thank you.
I think there'll be various coping mechanisms involved in that one, but Alan, I'll come back to you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so a normal procedure would be just to divert that waste to Oakbank as the contingency plan that's set within that. But as highlighted by the Executives Director, is that at the moment the plant is actually coping due to the volumes of waste, so there's no redirection or minimal redirection that's been required since the Christmas restart. Thanks, Chair.
Could,
That answer your question?
could I ask the cost of this is obviously additional cost, and how much more it is against the oral operation as such?
I think
Yeah,
I think that would be a very difficult one to answer, as we don't know the amount of waste that's coming in, but Alan?
Yeah, I think that where we are, it's minimalistic at the moment. I think when we did divert some of the percentage at the beginning of the year due to the significant increase at Christmas, it was £2,000 a day for a couple of days. The full diversion, if the site actually closes, the business continuity plan evidence that if the site went completely shut down and it couldn't process any waste at all, the full diversion cost is £16,000 a day. But that's a full shutdown. The bore conveyor element is a minimal part of that operation. And as we suggest, as was already said, it will be removed as part of the refinements into the Dumfries Zero Waste site. So I think as it sits at the moment, it changes daily as highlighted before, but at the moment the projected costs are estimated based on that recovery of £2,000 a day, if and when required, but not been required very much up to the current date. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you,
Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. Just to echo your thanks at the beginning of the meeting as well. Just on page 27 at 4.6, I'm just wondering if I can get some more information on the waste services pressure in relation to the drop in income from the recyclates. And then at 4.7, just with the concerns about the slow uptake to the numbers shining up, just wondering what's been done to increase the uptake. And then on page 33, with regards to the reducing the council's property estate, the first one, I'm just wondering if we're confident we'll still achieve those savings. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I pass that to Alan?
Thanks, Chair, through yourself. Yeah, so where we're sitting regarding the garden waste, so there's been less recruitment anticipated for the pickup crews that we've got. So then the original projection was 6 vehicles. Excuse me, and the crews that we go with them. As it stands at the moment, we're only looking at actually staffing 3 crews to minimise the revenue costs associated with the garden waste project, and that then will be projected in a build-up programme will be done based on the volumes as we increase. The second part of that question was how do we anticipate increasing that volume? So we do anticipate, as suggested through Scottish Government supporting that, would see a pick-up once we see the bins actually being delivered. So I guess community chat would see an impact on that as a positive impact. On top of that, we're looking at pulling together a marketing strategy that will continuously promote the garden waste project, and ultimately look at further down as far as the waste strategy is concerned, that we'd be looking at the potential of trying to maximise the utilisation of the garden waste in conjunction with a review of future elements associated with the grey bin, the general waste pickups as well, to try and maximise green waste not going into residual waste but going into garden waste bins. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Wilson, that answer your point?
It did on that one. Just my other 2 points I made. If I could get an answer to those, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Lisa?
So with regards to whether the 50,000 co-location is achievable in terms of a saving, I think it's difficult to answer that at the moment, if I am honest. We are working with partners to explore those options, but I think all organisations are experiencing a drop in staff in terms of hybrid working arrangements, but it's also got to align with our own asset management strategy that I referred to earlier, in terms of us rationalising the estate at the same time. So yeah, I can't, I'm hopeful we will be able to deliver it, but I can't confidently say that at the moment.
Yep, you'd like to come back?
Sorry, thank you. It was, I did ask about reducing the council's property estate, so that's on the first line, and just if we were confident about delivering that saving. And I asked for, I asked on page 27 for more information in relation to the drop in income from the recyclates. Thank you.
Yep. Alan, can I pass that to you, please?
Yeah, so the drop in income from recyclates, so that the market fluctuates continuously. I think we brought it to members' attention that seems to fluctuate at the moment to a negative element. As far as that, the impact that'll have, won't know that full impact until we see the financial outcome at the end of the year, because it may pick up between now and then as far as the price per tonne of recyclates is concerned. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Does that answer all your points then?
Just the one on the reducing the council's property estates. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Apologies, got them mixed up there. So that's the one where we're working on the strategy. In 6 months' time, we'll start that piece of work. So I'm confident that the saving can be delivered, but the timescales may just need to be altered.
Thank you for that. Councillor Slater, you still have your hand up, or do you want to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just the amount of bins that's been ordered and equipment, and obviously if there's not a large take-up, are the bins being ordered to order, you might say, or have we purchased all these bins and there is a possibility we might not get the uptake on them, and obviously that's a cost. Thank you.
My understanding is they're being delivered depending on the uptake at any particular time. I think they're coming at various times throughout the year. Alan, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so the most important part of that, I think, Chair, is through yourself, is that funding was allocated for Scottish Government, so it's not a Dumfries and Galloway budget allocation that's picked that up on. So we received funding. Sorry, I can't remember the figure at the moment, but we received funding to support us with the purchasing, well, to deliver the purchasing of the RCVs, so the waste vehicles, and also the capital spend that was from that received. Also covered bins, and also covered some elements of work that required at a couple of sites just to receive the garden waste. So all the capital costs, as far as that's concerned, are no cost associated with council budget or any pressure associated with that. The only cost associated for us moving forward would be the revenue costs attributed to this delivery of the service. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. I have no further speakers. If we'd like to go to the recommendations, are members happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2? Okay, yep. We go to item 5, Capital Programme Update Report Quarter 3, 24-25. This report provides members with an update in relation to the delivery and financial progress of the approved capital programme across the asset classes and priority projects within the current delegated responsibility of E&I Committee. Karen Brownlee is available to take any questions on the report, along with other officers as may be required. Members can open now. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's a question on active travel, which is, I can find it, page 60, Appendix 4. This is my first question, if you'll allow me, Chair. I can come back with the second question. And basically, my question is, it always seems to be delayed and the budget underspent. This has been happening for a couple of years, and we get quite a lot of money from Scottish Government on this. And when prevention and early intervention, health outcomes and inequalities, it should be at the heart of what we do. Why does this always seem to be the last thing we want to invest in? Thank you.
Karen, would you like to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Dorward, for your question. Chair, if it's okay, I'll bring in Tony Topping, who is online, to answer that specific question. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the question, Councillor. Yes, I was just having a look there myself. We do have a full programme of active travel schemes this financial year. I think we previously reported that we're working more in collaboration with Sueztrans. We're combining our budgets. I'll have to have a look at that. I think it says 8% progress. That there has been a lot of progress. It may just be the reporting there. As I say, we've been working on strategic projects with Sueztrans. We've been delivering a lot of minor improvements on the ground. We've been working with other departments, economic development, core path network. So I think it's maybe it doesn't do us justice what's maybe been reported there and as read. But as usual, we come to the end of the financial year, and there will be a bit of money still to spend with the external money that we are receiving. So I'll probably get another report on progress for the end of the financial year for you.
Thank you for that, Tony. Lisa?
Can I suggest that we provide all members with an accurate update on the active travel side of things in terms of travel, in terms of progress, if we're suggesting that that figure's not accurate outside of the committee, so that you have an update sooner than the next committee?
Councillor Doran.
Thanks for that, Director, and thanks, Tony, for your response. But it's quite concerning that this report isn't accurate, because it says very definitely 8%. Now, either that is accurate, or we don't know exactly what we're doing. We don't have a handle on this. So that's concerning as well, because active travel should be higher on our agenda than perhaps it is. So a report back would be really welcomed, but I am very concerned about the fact that this report may be wrong, which is what council officers have said. Thank you.
I think we've also got to remember that it's almost the data that we'll be considering this on is almost 2 months out of date. It is the third quarter. It would be prepared well into that. The report would be prepared because of various timescales. But you have been assured you will get an accurate, up-to-date report on that. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually page 37, 4.5. It's about the Ice Bowl and the request for the 730,000 to address the shortfall. What progress is being made to come to some form of agreement to either have the cash drawdown or the grant put into 25-26? And does that jeopardise the project in any way? Because as we're all aware, we're getting a decarbonisation grant. We're all aware of the extensive energy use of the Ice Bowl, so this should be something progressed with some urgency.
Okay, I'll pass you over to Karen for that.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for your question. Just to confirm to all members, the Scottish Government grant has now been agreed this week, so that's good news in terms of this project. Thank you.
That answer your point?
I'm delighted with that answer, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning all. It was just on the back of Councillor Dorward's comments and then Tony's response. There was, we're going to get a report back on active travel, which I think is really welcome. But there was a mention of the core paths, I think you said, Anthony, as part of the active travel. And I'm just wondering, can I put a request in that we get an update on our core paths? Because I think it was about a year ago we agreed that there would be a full review, that the Outdoor Access Forum would be taking that forward. I'm conscious that the Outdoor Access Forum is actually meeting, I think, probably as we speak right now. So I appreciate that outdoor access is maybe not in the remit of Tony's role, but I think it would be really useful to get an update to look at the whole system and where we are with our core path network, our outdoor access and active travel, because if we're taking a one council approach, it'd be quite useful to have that one council approach across all the areas. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. I think it's, maybe we should note that I maybe did say a report back, but I think members would be advised. I think waiting for a report to the next committee might not be beneficial. I think we're looking for an accurate update on the position, and we could look at the best way of delivering that, whether it be an update to members in between meetings or well before the next meeting, or in fact at the next meeting as well. But that's something we could consider. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a few questions in this, so I can do them one by one if that's okay. Or the first one's just about compliance. I wouldn't normally try and get into parochial things, but it's in the report at 4.11. Just around the Kirkcudbright Bridge issue. So while I appreciate this will have been a subject that's vexed local members, it's just about now that there's a 7.5 tonne weight restriction recommended and that's in place, how does that actually get enforced? Because we can set the limits, but I think it'd probably be the police that would have to do that in terms of preventing that. I've got a few others as well, but just if you want to pick them off one by one, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll bring in Duncan on that one, but as far as that, yes, as it stands just now, any enforcement of road traffic offences has to be the police, but we could look at other ways of mitigating that. Duncan, can I pass that to you?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so we have been in discussion with Police Scotland on enforcement. They have actually pulled over some drivers already.
Duncan, sorry, can I interrupt you a second? The signal's almost unreadable. It's coming through.
Sorry, Chair.
We're getting a really bad echo.
Is that better?
It seems to be, yes. You could try that.
Sorry about that. I've had some trouble with Teams this morning. Sorry, yeah, so what I was saying is that since the 7.5 tonne limit came into force, I know that Police Scotland have pulled over a number of drivers, and I think they've given them warnings basically already. We are actively undertaking traffic counts, which shows that there's been a marked drop in the number of overweight vehicles, but there are still some there that are still continuing to do so, which is a bit worrying. So we are, after I think once our month's data has been collated, we'll be going back to discuss it with Police Scotland and to see what further assistance they could give us on that. We've also got CCTV in mind, which will give us further evidence, specific evidence of the actual vehicles in question. The traffic counts is a sort of blind count, if you like. It doesn't give you video footage. It's just a numerical count in terms of the size of the vehicle. So kind of trying to look to back that up with some CCTV. So there's a number of things in play at the moment. We're glad that there's been a drop, but maybe not the complete drop we were hoping for. So we're still in discussion around that with Police Scotland.
Thank you for that. Councillor Thompson, you have a few other points you want to bring?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So one of them is actually about the, it was the 4.48 million inclusive of professional fees. I was just wondering, is it possible to get a breakdown of what those professional fees are? Because obviously there's an increase in costs, but it does highlight that element in the report at 4.5. I mean, some of these questions are quite rudimentary, so I'll come back to the next one after this if you want to address that. Thank you.
So again, I'm having difficulty. I'm getting part of that, but it's, the sound quality today is really, really poor. Either that or it's my ears are very poor. But I don't know how other members. You referred to a paragraph. Could you repeat that again?
Well, I should say, Chair, rather than take the blame on yourself, sometimes I do tend to mumble and sort of speak quietly, so it could well be me. So at 4.5, it's just to get a number for the professional fees, the quantum, if you like, just to understand what proportion that is. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very clear this time. Mo.
Thank you, Chair. So the 4.48 is inclusive of everything, so works, professional fees, consents, etc. But once we award the contractor, because we are through a tender evaluation, I'm happy to give a full breakdown of everything that's included in that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll defer back to you. Could you say how many points you have, just so I can manage it here?
I've got another 2.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for being greedy, Chair. So the next one is just about, it's it's to do with the Annan Bridges, basically. And we've spoke about core paths a little bit already for this item. I'm just trying to get an understanding. I think we acknowledged in the first paragraph there, they're private, but the council was happy to work with others, given the significance of the bridges locally, to try and find a way to restore them in some sort of fashion as they're part of the core path network, which we do have a duty to try and ensure is maintained. So what I'm asking is the intention of this council for a report to come back and then we'll actually pay to put the bridges in and then maintain them, or are we expecting an external source of funding to provide the actual bridges? Because at the moment it's just preparatory work. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pass that to Tony and see if we can help me. Sorry, back to I think, by the surprise in Tony's face, I think it's possibly Duncan.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, I mean, the councillor, Councillor Thompson, you're quite right. I mean, the bridges were privately owned essentially, although the council's interest in them was that the co-path was routed across them. So we had an interest in sort of maintaining and looking after them to some degree without having direct ownership. The council stepped in to remove the bridges from the river is almost like a duty of care, almost as the authority here in Dumfries and Galloway, to take them out of the water to prevent any further scour and any further damage to other key structures downstream, including the railway line between Dumfries and Gretna. So that was the backstory. Going forward, we have not given a commitment to doing anything further beyond the conclusion of the options appraisal exercise, which will come to conclusion this month. But we are looking to take a possible project to the Gateway Review, through the Gateway Review process at the Capital Investment Board, as we would do with other major investments, to check the business case for it, to see if it is a justifiable case for the council to invest in moving forward. And that will be taking part, that work will be taken into effect later this month and into March. And then the idea was to report back to the group and also to give an update to this committee on the outcome of that process.
Thank you for that, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that, so we'll expect an ask, I think, for a new capital project. So, and the final one for me is just on table 5 at page 40, it talks about, it lists all the projects that have been cancelled but carried forward into the next capital programme, some of which is listed on a sort of subsequent appendix. It was just to get a sense. I'm sure there was a time when, after a bit of wrangling, we managed to get the cost of contracts. So we got a sense of how much it was costing to do particular capital programme elements. So looking at this, I have no idea how much money is getting carried forward in terms of the projects that have been cancelled and then moved into year 25-26. But it would certainly be helpful to sort of justify and get a sense of best value if we knew that whatever budgets would allocate to these projects is then carried forward in the appropriate way. And we've got an understanding that, well, we knew that when we fixed the A780 Buccleuch Street Bridge, it came in at the right price and we budgeted properly for it, just so we know what we're spending our money on and what we're getting for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. You're obviously on a bridge day today. Stuart, can I pass that to you?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, certainly happy to look at providing some of the figures on the outturns along with the carry forward to the members going forward. What I will say is there is obviously quite a number of projects here. What we did from the road service point of view last year is we overcommitted. So our budgets are probably going to come in line with the actual budget allocated for the year. We overcommitted on the basis that we were looking to try and do more work through the road fund than what we in the first year and second year, and then tailing off in years 3 and 4. Unfortunately, due to issues with the supply chain, we've been unable to progress as many projects as we wanted. We wanted a quick hit for the region, so that has had an impact. But we can certainly look at providing figures on what's being carried forward in the future yet.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just finally on that. No, I appreciate that. I think, but would it be possible, just in the public interest, to get a sense of this is what these projects which we had in our programme but have now been cancelled would have cost? It would seem to be fairly reasonable to say, well, we had the budget for it for various reasons that are quite justifiable. We couldn't carry them out this year, so that budget and work programme can get carried forward. But at this point, I've no idea what the value of these is, or if they did get cancelled, maybe there was a reserve project that could have bid into that amount of capital that was left over. But we have no idea how much the budget was, or even if another project would have been able to use that. So I just feel there's not enough data here to make, for public information and scrutiny in terms of best value. So if we can improve that, which we did in previous committees, we had a list of the project costs, etc., next to the line of the capital programme. So, either we can do that, or we could do it and now we can't, or we can't do it in future we can. So I'd like a bit of consistency with that. Thanks.
We'll certainly look into the best way of providing that information. I think it's also important to note that some of these projects weren't actually going to go ahead because they're no longer suitable, etc., or there's one there cancelled, a duplicate. So on the ones that were outstanding, yes, I think we could look at a way of providing that information to members and come back to you. Councillor John Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Councillor Thompson actually stole my question. That was about the bridges over the River Annan. But there was one other particular point I wanted to raise on page 37, 4.6, which is the public toilet upgrade to the septic tanks. We've already got a budget line coming up, although not yet approved, but the budget was to remove all public toilets. I'm just wondering, is this a project worth taking forward? The budget's only weeks away, and I don't know if we can actually achieve this in the timescale between now and then. Thanks, Chair.
I'll defer to Karen for that.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Campbell, for your question. The projects that are listed in 4.6 have been ongoing for a couple of years now, and the majority of those, the work will be progressed in 25-26. We're aware of the budget proposal in line with the budget setting process at the end of this month, and we will work in parallel depending on what is decided at full council. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's 2.6 for memory. It's 2.6, Appendix 6. It's just in regards to the details. So there's quite a bit of detail there, but if you look at them in general terms, it's difficult to pinpoint and understand what works is being undertaken there. I just wonder if there's an opportunity for somebody for the roads, one of the roads officials, to get in touch with the elected members, certainly Annandale and Estill, but maybe across the piece to be able to access what the level of work that's being carried out. And in the second point is in regards to I suppose, the Two Tails Bridge, the organisation. Duncan was speaking on it earlier, but I mean, certainly we're expecting that to come to Annandale and Estill Area Committee to have some kind of update in regards to that, and have a recommendation coming back up to a service committee from there in a potential way forward too, just as a point of interest.
Okay, I think I'll defer to Stuart in the first instance.
Yeah, Appendix 6 is the programme of works for the coming financial year for public realm and the carriageways. So that is the proposed programme that we're looking to get agreement today from members to progress with in 25-26. There is still a portion of the public realm budget. There will be an update on the footways, street lighting, and the drainage schemes for April committee. We'll come to April committee for approval for that, but certainly that Appendix 6 is the programme of works for 25-26. You'll also get a progress update 2 weeks prior to this committee on the schemes for 24-25. So you should have received that. All members should have received that 2 weeks prior to this committee on the update of what we have achieved this financial year so far.
Thank you. Duncan, is there anything you'd like to come in on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, admit what I didn't say before and probably should have done, so apologies, is that there are a number of options in terms of council support to the group. So currently we're offering support to administer the options appraisal exercise. That's been undertaken by an external consultant, Amy. And one of the options would be to sort of continue in that vein, but then other options extend beyond that to actually giving more support to actually pay for a detailed design, or ultimately pay in some way towards the reconstruction of the new bridges. And that could be in full or in part. So there is a number of options, and I know the recommendations coming out in the appraisal report is for the group, is to give them some advice on how they might go about securing funding, not just council funding, but other sources of funding as well. And they're well aware of that. So yes, and to Councillor Carruthers, thank you for raising your point, and I'd be happy to take some sort of update to Andy Lesdale committee as well.
Yes, certainly.
Firstly, just thank Duncan for that and look forward to seeing it and realise that the committee, Duncan, when you come. I know it'll be a constructive conversation with yourselves and your team. So to just try and put context in regards to Stuart's answer, sorry. So just to look for some kind of understanding. So in general terms, as one of there says, it says Creeka is a project. I don't know what that means. It just means Creeka is a place, it's a settlement. Or there's another section of road between East Riggs and Stapleton Grange. I think it's overlay or restructuring, whatever it may be. It just mean that road's horrific, but just to get an understanding, what does that mean? Is that the fill in the pothole? Is that a complete structural overlay? Is that 50 metres, 100 metres, 200 metres? So I don't think that's appropriate to get that level of detail here, but what I'm asking is for that verbal update away from committee. I'm just making that the question now. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Stuart's indicated they'll provide that for you.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. I have two more speakers. I'll go to Councillor Slater first. He's the first time speaker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 38, 411. It's about the Kirkcudbright Bridge. It was said there, obviously, there's a weight limit being put on this bridge of 7.5 tonnes, and there's a counter system on the road and there's CCTV, but some vehicles are still obviously continuing to cross the bridge. There is systems now where you put a pad on the road, and it will weigh the vehicle, and the CCTV will take the pictures. So therefore, hopefully, the police then could then deal with that situation for future data. And that would hopefully stop other large vehicles driving across that bridge. That's just my thoughts on this.
Thank you. I'm sure that will be noted. I think that this was an emergency action that we did take because of the weight restriction. We got that through very quickly. And the situation has been monitored, and we will be looking at other ways that we can enforce it should it not be successful. And the early indications are that there's still an element of vehicles ignoring that, so there will be further steps taken. But Duncan, have you got anything to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think you covered it. Yeah, you covered it well yourself there. Thank you. We'll look at all options open to us. I think there's an element of education still required, and maybe notification out there, and we'll pursue that as well as any other measures. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I'll go to Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me back in. It's more a query, you'll be pleased to hear. It's page 39, table 4. The traffic calming measures. So we know that the Scottish Government are proposing to reduce speed limits for cars and HGVs to 50 miles an hour, cars 50 miles an hour, and HGVs staying the same on non-dual A roads. And the consultation apparently runs until Wednesday the 5th of March. So there's a question about why was the pilot planned prior to the consultation outcomes being shared? How was the site PEC A708? Who agreed this, and how long is the pilot? It's almost like we're being done to as opposed to consulted with here. And it's concerning, as unlike the central belt, the south of Scotland doesn't have the luxury of motorways connecting locations across the region. So it's not really investing in roads, it's a way of reducing investment for some of our most challenging routes. But my question more is about how has this come about, and given that the consultation doesn't end until the 5th of March, it's already in place, which is, for quarter 4, I get that, but the consultation hasn't ended yet, and we're already looking at a pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll defer to Tony for that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for your question, Councillor Dorward. Yeah, we were approached, I think it was around about October, November last year by Scottish Borders Council. They were concerned with a spate of fatalities and serious accidents on both roads in the borders, well, it was predominantly roads in the borders, and which included the A708, which runs from Moffat up to Selkirk. They had a plan that in order to reduce these, they had a small network of strategic roads where these fatal accidents had been occurring, and they wanted to trial a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. What they've told me is it's totally separate from the speed limit review. and this pilot is just to focus on these specific roads with regards to road safety improvement measures to reduce these accidents. So they approached us and said, would we like to consider just doing the whole of the A708 end to end from Moffat to Selkirk? And it made sense. I've consulted with the ward officers, we've consulted with Police Scotland as well, and the temporary speed limit's going to be in place for 18 months, which will be constantly reviewed and monitored during that period. As I say, it is separate from the Transport Scotland speed management review, which we will be responding to by the 5th of March. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for that, Tony. Councillor Donald.
Thank you for that, Tony. I understand the health and safety concerns and I understand the need to work in conjunction with other councils. It's just interesting timing, and also the funding is coming from Scottish Government for this. So I'm not fully convinced this isn't part of the Scottish Government's intention or proposal to reduce speed limits for cars in HGV. So I think it is connected, although you're saying it isn't. I think it's interesting timing, but thank you for your response.
Thank you for that. I think it's only reasonable in this particular case where there has been a number of fatal accidents to look at right across the board, and this is obviously one way we could help to support it. There may or may not be political interest, but that's for somewhere else, not here. I have no further speakers on this, and members... Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on the back of what's been said about the speed limit on the A708 and the fact that we've had a request from the Scottish Borders Council. I find it, it's just more an observation and a comment. I find it surprising that we seem to be able to move quite quickly when we get a request from Scottish Borders Council. Yet when local communities raise concerns about speed limits, we don't seem to respond with the same speed. And that's just a comment.
I take your point, but I think in this particular case, albeit it was a request from another local authority, but there were also a promise of funding from the Scottish Government, that would indicate some sort of priority. But Tony, would you like to come in?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just want to add as well that the Scottish Borders Council have actually been sort of project managing and designing the signs, etc. for this. So our input is that we'll just advertise the temporary order, and we'll receive the funding from Transport Scotland to pay for our input into this. So really our resource input into it has been fairly minimal. And just as another point, we did do some traffic data surveys on the A708, and what we found was that the majority of the route, it's not really suitable for doing much more than 50 miles an hour anyway if you're driving at reasonable speeds. So that was just another aspect that justified the temporary speed limit. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I'll now move to the recommendations. Are members happy to... sorry? Councillor Marsh. Yeah, sorry, that was a late one coming in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in there. It's just in relation to the Newton Stewart flood scheme under major projects at 4.25 on page 47. It does state later in the paper that we hope to see in Q1 of this year an update and timings on the potential hearing for this. But it just feels like the preparation work for this hearing has been ongoing for some time now. Can we get any clarity today on a date for that hearing? And can I also request that all stakeholders within the community are kept up to date as regards, when this hearing may be? My second question relates to page 53 and the proposed refurbishment work at the Merrick Leisure Pool at Douglas Stewart High School. It does state a completion date of August 25. But on the brief project update section, it says that the project has been reprogrammed due to other commitments. Is this going to be a delay in completion, or can we still go for that completion date? Thank you.
I'll go to Karen for the first part.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Marsh, for your question. Just to update you in relation to Newton Stewart, flood scheme work is still ongoing, as reported in the report in preparation for the hearing. We still do not have a date in relation to that, but what I can do is give you my assurance that ward members and stakeholders, including Community Council, will be kept up to date as soon as we have any further developments. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Karen. Mo?
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the Merrick Centre, yes, we have difficulties in terms of engaging contractor and moving forward, but the good news, I can't get into too much detail about it because we are on tender evaluation at the moment, but I can say that we received a good number of tenders and we should appoint hopefully a contractor very shortly. We're not aware of any impact on the completion date. We adjusted the programme to take into account the delays we encountered at the front, but if there is anything that will impact the programme going forward, I'm happy to come back to members with an update and let them know. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Marsh, does that answer your point?
Yep, that's grand, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I definitely don't have any other speakers.
Councillor Slater.
Councillor Slater, you asked to come back in. Can I ask members that rather than me up here and stuttering, I'm nearly getting to the recommendations, that they give me a bit earlier notice that they want to speak? It'd be a lot easier for me to manage it. Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Right, Chair, thank you. It's on page 41, carriageway drainage. Now, I must admit that carriageway drainage, when you get heavy rain, there's a lot of places in the region who continually to flood and never seem to be repaired. You have to ask the question, why? Because there's the Bollocks Bridge on Brooms Road. Every time it rains heavy, it's flooded, yet that could be surely repaired. And why are these not identified and brought up to a reasonable standard? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass you over to Stuart. But, I dare say that in heavy rain there will be some areas that do flood, but I think in the past year or so I've seen more work on carriageway drainage than I've ever seen. The amount of offcuts that have been entered, and this morning, for instance, was a particularly wet day, and yes, you're always going to get some element of flooding. Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, certainly the road service in the past year or so have noticed that there is a particular issue with drainage. We're increasing our capital spend on drainage this year. We're also in the process of tendering or going out to tender for 2 specific items of plant that will deal with drainage in the future. So we have recognised the problem with the drainage and we're looking to address that over the next 6 months and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can you lower your hand, please? Thank you. Without doubt, going to the recommendations, are members happy to agree with the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.7? Okay, if we go to item 6, UK Shared Prosperity Fund Update Report by the Head of Economy and Environment. At the meeting of this committee held on the 8th of June, elected members agreed to receive regular updates on the progress of delivery of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. This is the first update of the 24-25 financial year, and it's timed to coincide with the update to the UK Government. It also provides details of the extension of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund for 25-26. But Steve Rogers is available to take any questions on the report, along with other officers as may be required. I'll open it up to members. Councillor Thompson, and how many questions this time?
3, sir. I can maybe make one of them a composite question, but I'll start off anyway. So it's basically around the... there's a couple of attached sort of tables that set out some of the projects, etc., and some of it identifies Dumfries and Galloway staff. as in council staff. So whether that's the place plan teams or the those involved maybe with local employability partnership, etc. So I'm just wanting to get a sense of how many staff do we know of ours are basically reliant on this funding for their employment, given that the valuable projects that they're currently carrying out, and obviously this year's extension will be helpful to that. The second part of that is, of the projects that are listed, how best do we monitor them? I appreciate they're getting rolled over, but it's not always obvious how we can track the impact and the effectiveness of those activities. A link to that as well is it does mention in the report just about the risk of losing some of the capital funding if it's not spent by the end of March, and that there is some work going on to try and make sure that that's allocated in the best way to maximise its likelihood of getting spent. But how much capital is at risk of not getting spent? So a bit of a composite question, and then I'll come on to the second and final question after that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure that Steve will answer the three elements of your one question. Steve.
Thank you, Chair, and morning, members. So, yes, I'll certainly try, Chair, to answer those questions. Some of the detail I don't have to hand, so I know that we have collected the staff numbers in terms of the impact of that, but I don't have that actually to hand, but we can certainly circulate that, Chair, to members after the meeting. In terms of the capital spend and the measures that we're taking to essentially try to achieve full spend of our allocation this year. So we have been proactively, first of all of the money within the three priority areas under this fund is fully allocated and committed to projects. So it's 100% allocated, and we are and have been proactively following up with each project sponsor individually to encourage them, first of all, to ensure that they spend their full allocation, and secondly, that they submit to us the grant claim forms on time. So we're doing everything that we can, Chair, to maximise that year-end spend. The one area where we do have concerns in terms of year-end spend is the Multiply programme, and that's something that we have in common with local authorities right across the UK. They've all had difficulties in terms of committing that particular element of the programme because of some of the difficulties in terms of actually commissioning suitable partners to deliver those adult numeracy programmes. And that's one of the reasons why UK government, in making the allocation extension for next financial year, has decided not to progress and not to proceed any further now with the Multiply allocation. And I think the other question relates to the work that we're doing on an ongoing basis in order to kind of monitor and oversee. So there's a couple of points there. First of all, it is a requirement of the funding that there is some evaluation of the project carried out on its completion. One of the challenges that we've had with the programme is that there were some significant delays at the start in terms of the UK government actually confirming approval of the final allocation. So there was a big delay in terms of some of the projects actually getting started. So one of the points of the extension of the programme by UK government is actually to allow some of those projects to actually conclude and complete the work that they have started, and it's only really at that point that we'll know the full impact and effectiveness of those projects. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I assume the delay was in part caused by the small matter of a general election falling in the middle of that period. Councillor Thompson, does that answer the first three elements of your first question?
Broadly, yes. I suppose the follow-up would be to where would the monitoring be reported to? Would it be this committee or community planning? I appreciate a lot of these aren't necessarily council-led groups, so I'd imagine the reporting, it's just really to get clarification of where and how that would be reported when the reports are ready to be shared. What should be the follow-up just on that point alone, Chair?
Yeah, so there's a couple of points there in terms of accountability. So one is back to the UK government in terms of providing the initial funding. But I think secondly, we would also intend to bring back a kind of programme level evaluation once the whole programme has completed. Bearing in mind that also by that time we're hopeful, Chair, that we will know the details of the UK government's intended follow-on programmes to UK SPF.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. And that basically leads me on to the second question or request. I do remember the issues we had in terms of the UK government at the time, which I think predated the UK election because there was a few changes in the senior leadership of the UK government at that time, which delayed things a wee bit. So on that, could we be, and I'm just conscious of the last item, where we have followed in the trail of Scottish Borders Council, who seem to have taken the initiative on a number of things about 20-mile-an-hour limits and A708 initiatives, etc. But could we be on the front foot? And at 4.6, given the timescales that we're often under to actually deliver these projects, could we take the initiative and write to the UK government and ask if they can be helpful in supplying the details of what a new fund might look like, and so that we can be, I suppose, assertive and also just on the front foot in terms of taking forward any bids to the future fund, whatever way that might be structured. Just conscious, it always seems to be we rush to meet a deadline and then we maybe don't get the details. And the last few years have been kind of characterised by that to some extent, by the nature of some of the funds we've been applying for. So with your permission, Chair, I'd ask that maybe you could write to them and just ask if they could share the details as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly wouldn't have any difficulty with that if we do not already have that information, but Steve will just check with you.
Chair, yes, thank you. Just a couple of points. One thing that we do know is that this will follow on from the UK government's spending review that's currently underway and is due to report in spring, whenever the government official definition of spring is, but that's the information that we have. But certainly, Chair, I think it would be helpful from a lobbying perspective, as Councillor Thompson suggests, to be on the front foot, given that this is expected to be a year of transition into a new programme, to at least get some early information in terms of what the priorities and what the objectives would be associated with that new programme. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. We'll certainly consider that when it comes to the recommendations. Any other questions from members? No, if that's the case, if we go to the recommendations, members happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.2 with an additional recommendation that we write to the Scottish Government to get the full details, etc. for that.
Chair, just to point out, as UK government for this fund.
Sorry?
It's the UK government for this fund.
Sorry, I thought I said UK government. My apologies if I didn't. Yeah, thank you. Okay. In that case, we'll go to item 7, vacant derelict land and property, a report by the Head of Economy and Environment. The report provides members with an update on the work to address the issues at the former Interfloor factory in Heath Hall, including engagement with potential development partners. It also advises members of the potential to commission site investigations and support progression towards a long-term regeneration opportunity at the site. Members are also being asked to consider the submission of a non-binding expression of interest to the Kings and Lords Treasurer's Remembrancer as part of the ownerless property transfer scheme to enable further engagement with interested developers to be carried out. In addition, the report seeks the agreement to the allocation of funding from the Council's Town Centre Living Fund to support the Strategic Housing Investment Plan project at Ashwood Drive in Stranraer. But Steve Rogers is available to take any questions on the report along with other officers as may be required. Councillor Dorward, thank you for bringing this, the first part of this to our attention anyway. Thank you. Okay, open it up to members. Councillor Carruthers.
Just a quick one to start off. It's probably for Jamie, Steve. It's the Ship, the Ashwood project at Stranraer. It's the 500k being asked to allocate. Jamie, I just want the level of detail on that. What do we really get for that money? It's a big round figure. You've outlined it quite clearly within the report. We had no other bidders for that. So you can see the justification, just to get a clearer understanding and what we'll probably see on the ground for that money. Thank you.
Okay, can I defer to Jamie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Carruthers, for the question on Ashwood Drive. In terms of the investment from the council, it's really supporting the regeneration of the site, which has been demolished. The intention is to provide 9 flats under the auspices of later living, so intended for people over 55 years of age or potentially with mobility issues to live in these flats. There'll also be separate to the support that's provided via the Town Centre Living Fund and the Affordable Housing Supply Programme, provision of an office space for Wheatley Homes South staff within the site. We know that through engagement with the local community, particularly in the development of the local place plan, they have highlighted the need for affordable housing in and around Stranraer Town Centre as a priority. We're hopeful that supporting this project will help to deliver some of those aspirations locally.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks very much. Just a quick point. So I think you've outlined it, Jamie, but I think you're saying that so the housing in the office is different. That's one of the bits I was trying to tease out there. So the money gets spent on the housing, not the office. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the acknowledgement earlier. Obviously delighted at the progress made on the interfloor site, and I would like to put on record thanks to the Chief Exec for lobbying of the Scottish Government directly and to the Council officers, especially Jamie, for the intense work undertaken to progress matters about this particular site. I know there are risks potentially in agreeing 2.3. There are some risks, but I would suggest that we go with it to progress matters as further recommended. It's not fair to Town Dumfries or residents of Heath Hall and Locher Briggs to maintain the status quo. So I've kept it short and sweet. You'll be relieved to hear, Chair. That's me. Thank you. But I think we should support 2.3.
Thank you for that. I hope that the fact that it's we're saying a non-binding expression of interest, that would give some sort of safety as far as that's concerned. And Councillor Davis.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm referring to page 99, paragraph 4.2 of the engagement for the former interfloor site, item 4.21. It states that discussions are ongoing with partners and potential developers. I would just like to ask how these discussions are going, if there's any updates, and is there a deadline for these discussions to finish? Thank you.
I think possibly it's a bit early to come back on that one yet, but Steve, can I ask you?
Chair, I can maybe bring Jamie in at this point, but I can confirm that we have been in discussion with various interested parties. One of the purposes behind recommending that we submit the expression of interest, having taken legal advice, as you would expect on that, is really to give us more opportunity to continue those discussions and that engagement with a view to identifying hopefully a suitable end use for the site.
Thank you.
Jamie, would you like to expand on that, too?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Davis. So, yeah, the engagement has effectively been a long list of potential developers that may have a potential interest in the site. And as Steve's mentioned, the intention is to really refine that list into what is a more deliverable regeneration opportunity. The additional time allowed will help us to do that. And what we're advising members on here is if they are in agreement with this process, we will look at effectively marketing the development brief further, just so that we can absolutely clarify for members' decision on how we would like to take this regeneration opportunity forward with partner organisations.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 99, it discusses engagement and it mentions that There used to be a previous funding from the Scottish Government, and I just wondered if maybe the committee could lobby to have that reinstated, or maybe ask the Government to come and see the derelict site that is the Interfor Factory, because it's in a terrible condition. And I do note as well, and it's encouraging to see that, you know, we do have interest, because on page 101 at 4.3.4 it discusses grant eligibility, and in actual fact the local authority would get the least amount of support from Historic Environment Scotland. So it's encouraging to see that other people are interested. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I could echo your comments about the site being in a terrible state. I was interested to hear Police Scotland again this week saying about the level of antisocial behaviour and fires, etc., going in the building. So it's important that we keep this at the foremost. Thank you. We have Councillor Thompson. I won't ask you how many.
Thanks, Chair. No issue in supporting 2.3. I think, as you pointed out, it's non-binding, and I think there's a path by which it could end up in our hands anyway if there's no interest and the remembrancer decides to avail themselves of it. But either way, that's long been a health and well-being issue for that part of Dumfries, and I'm conscious that we'd need to have a condition assessment, including something to do with assessing the level of contamination in the grounds, because there are a number of chemicals there that, well, it has been known for some time, you know, there's a significant risk potentially in terms of what kind of contaminants are there. So I think, will we be carrying that out, and when? Or will we be arranging for carrying that out, and when? And also, is there anything we can do with the conversations we're having at Scottish Government level to encourage HES, who seem to be acting with authority without responsibility, by potentially increasing B listings to A listings and all the rest of it, which is clearly counter to any meaningful way forward that could benefit the area if it's just for the sake of protecting something that has been left to decrepitude for many, many years. So I'm just really struggling with the contradiction and the outcomes that seem to be getting sought for here, and all the burden falls to local authorities in the community, and the pontification lands with HES, which seem to be able to... I'm just sort of thinking, is there a way we can work and lobby with government and other partners to allow their relaxation of that to actually be practical in the real world? Thank you.
I think we all agree that there are significant issues there. And I think the way we're looking at it by declaring this non-binding interest is a first step. But without doubt, even the age of the building, etc., there's a high probability there's contamination from other materials, asbestos, etc., that will take a significant investment into. I think we'll need to look very carefully at the plans on how we start investigating and what responsibility we take at any particular stage. But I'm sure Steve and the team will bear that in mind, but your comments are well noted. Thank you. Steve, can I pass it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And yeah, just to confirm that the intention is, and we're currently working with the Project Management Office, the PMO, in Property Services, in order to take those investigations, those site investigations, which include contaminated land surveys, forward. It's important that we do that for a couple of reasons, I think. First of all, to provide a degree of certainty in terms of potential interested development partners, so we would make that information available. And secondly, as Councillor Thompson has mentioned, it puts us into a better position in terms of that engagement with Historic Environment Scotland, which we have already started. But however, it's very clear that we are going to need at some point in the process to evidence that the building, in our view, is non-viable in terms of its protection as a historic asset, and that perhaps the best way forward might be for a sensitive redevelopment of the site. However, we need to have the evidence in order to back up that case, and that's part of the reason that we want now to look at commissioning this work. Chair, thank you.
Yeah, it does appear to be that it's a kind of default position of historic Environment Scotland that they will try and protect the integrity of a listed building. But there are cases where it's really not viable, and it's something we'll certainly need to bear in mind. Thank you for raising that. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a little bit about the factory background here. A few years ago, when I moved, I actually lived in Hill. I started the community council there, and the factory were very good. We managed to get the path across the field. We got them to build the chimney to protect the people from the fumes that came out of the Tradia Park. They made the Welton boots, and they actually donated the land for our library out there as well. And to see it now in the state it's in, it's absolutely disgraceful. I feel as well, if it had been protected by CCTV and other methods, the building could still be in a lot better condition. But the fact it's a concrete building as well, so most of the inside is reasonably sound. And maybe there's a possibility down the way that, I don't know if flats could be built there or not, but I always think if you've got a building, you've got half the project. If you've no building, you've got nothing. So it's just so sad to see it in such a state. Thank you.
Thank you. You've raised the issue of CCTV and the premises before. Again, it's down to ownership or lack of ownership in this particular case, and who would fund such a project. I think we're doing it as much as we possibly can to try and get the situation resolved, and we recognise that this has to be done with an element of urgency. Okay. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I welcome the report and happy to support 2.3. But just maybe a point of clarification. In 2.3, it's to do with part of the ownerless property transfer scheme, which is in the appendix. And looking on page 124, it says here that demonstrating community support. Does that support need to be done before the application goes in, or is that actually part of the application? Because it's asking for examples like a petition, a community council consultation, or a ballot of those on the electoral register in the defined community. So I'm just wondering if that's part of the process due to happen, or does that have to happen before the application goes in? Thanks.
Steve, can I come to you now?
Chair, I maybe invite Jamie to come in and provide the response. Thank
Jamie?
you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Campbell. In terms of engagement with the local community, that's been ongoing throughout the process, particularly through the ward worker for the area, who's been engaging directly with Heath Hall Community Council on potential solutions for the site. Heath Hall Community Council were, as you would expect, one of the main contributors to the development of the vacant and derelict land and property strategy. We do have a meeting also with the KLTR, the Kings and Lords and Treasurers Remembrance, this week, and we'll absolutely clarify the requirements for the application, and we will be advising them on the engagement that's been carried out both with potential development partners and the local community.
Councillor Campbell, does that answer your point?
Yeah, no, I welcome that. Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Jamie, for that. It's just that most people that come to me, they just want to see it knocked down.
Right, I have no further speakers in that case. I'm going to move to recommendations. Are members happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.4? Okay. We go to item 8, Port William and Muffet Local Place Plans Report by Head of Economy and Environment. The report is in a supplement pack with appendices 1 to 4. This report asks members to consider the Port William Local Place Plan and the Muffet Local Place Plan with their associated supporting submissions for them to be registered by the Council as local place plans. With Steve Rogers is available to take any questions on the report along with other officers as may be required. Steve, is there anything you want to add to the report at this stage?
Not at this stage, thank you, Chair. We do have John Doig and Fraser James on the call in case members have any detailed questions. Thank you.
Right, I'll open it up to members.
Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I don't suppose it really is a detailed question about the particular place plans, but communities put a lot of hard work into preparing these plans. And one of the concerns that's been raised to me, and it's just on page 3 of the supplementary part, 4.1, the final few words on that says the council is required to take into account when preparing the next local development plan these place plans. What does taking into account actually entail, Steve?
Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for the question. So this is a part of the changes that were introduced when the planning system was reviewed a few years ago by Scottish Government. So the purpose really behind that is to ensure that local authorities, when they're producing and preparing their new local development plans, as the wording says, take account of. In other words, we have to, first of all, acknowledge their existence, and secondly, their content, and where, in the context of our wider policy development, those place plans fit with what we're trying to do through those planning policies for that community, then we need to reflect that into LDP3 itself. So the taking into account means that we have to explicitly, openly and transparently acknowledge them and assess the way in which they might be incorporated as appropriate into LDP3. I think, just Chair, if I may just add to that in terms of the other purpose of the local place plans is to allow communities to have a means by which they can start to lobby for and secure external funding for some of the aspirations and projects within the place plans themselves. So what we're seeing increasingly by external grant awarding bodies, for example, is that they are much more inclined to look at funding individual initiatives if there is a context of a place plan sitting behind them. So that's really another added purpose behind them. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just, it is a lot of work for a lot of communities, and I know they needed quite a lot of assistance at times to get through it, and they could perhaps get a bit disheartened with it. And it's really, as much as anything else, for a bit of reassurance for these people that their efforts will be valued.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Convener, for bringing me in. It's more really a comment, but with a question at the end, if I may. I'm looking at the Port William local place plan. I know that individuals in the communities have been working really hard in bringing this together. I think there was a comment made a while ago at committee and referenced Port William as not much happening in the village. And I think this place plan shows, just what a vibrant place Port William is, whether you're looking at Persac, the historic Carnival Week at Port William is incredible, and I've had the privilege of attending such an event. So I really welcome the chance to get it registered, and the work that's been going in is brilliant. And thank the officers as well, because I know that they've been liaising backwards and forwards too. I think my question on the back of that is, and it touched upon the previous comments as well, a lot of work is going into these plans. We're getting them registered, but it's the so what question. And certainly Jamie Little referenced the housing opportunity in Stranraer and how that came out as part of a place plan. Do we get, or are we likely to get, a review of some of these place plans, a sort of an update? I'm conscious we're getting more and more of these place plans registered, but when do we find out? When do we get the feedback of actually this has really helped drive these projects and a review? Now, I don't think maybe a year is enough time to really embed, but I'm just conscious at what point, I think possibly was it Sanker was one of the first place plans that were registered. When do we get some information back on what difference these are making? Because I do appreciate it's a huge amount of work for the community, and it would be useful to know what impact they're having. Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hagman, for the question. It is a good question, and I suppose Councillor Hagman's already touched on part of the answer, which is that we will need to allow, and communities will need to allow some time for their place plans to start to have the influence that they would like them to have. There is a piece of work that we as a council and as community planning partners need to do, which is to look at how we as organisations respond to those place plans in terms of our own policies and our own priority setting. So there is that piece of work around, I suppose you could call it mainstreaming some of the content of local place plans to ensure that there is a place dimension or a place perspective or a place lens taken when some of those key decisions are made. So given that we're at still a very early stage in the kind of evolution of the approach to place planning, that's something that I would anticipate as being one of the earlier next steps. And at that point, we might then start to see how some of those place plans have actually been translated through into affecting or impacting on projects or policies or funding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Councillor Hagman.
Could I come back, Chair?
Yes,
yeah, if I could just come back, I think, Steve, that's really helpful, and you've referenced their community planning. Is there a specific action on the community planning partnership that they're taking forward to really commit and deliver these place plans? Because, you know, the local authority can't do everything on our own. And as the place plans allude, you know, there's issues with transport, there's issues with access to health services. And to me, the community planning partnership would potentially have a role to oversee that. So is that a specific task that the community planning partnership are delivering on? Because I appreciate that community planning partnership meet fairly regularly, and it's not always clear to me what the outcomes of those meetings are. And certainly to actually get a task taken forward in terms of place planning would, I think, be a really tangible outcome for the community to see value in the community planning partnerships and actually see a result coming from that. So is there a specific action within that forum to taking these things forward? Thanks, Chair.
Steve?
Chair, yes, thank you. And yes, just to assure Councillor Hagman that attached to the community planning partnership, there is a place planning group that meets on a regular basis. So that is a cross-organisational group that is looking at the whole approach to place planning. And I think one of the things that we need to do is to build in a connection from the emerging local place plans themselves and that particular group. So I'll certainly take that away, Chair.
Thank you for that, Steve. I have Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. My question's been covered by a previous speaker, so I'm just going to be very parochial and say that I'm really pleased to see Moffat's place plan coming forward. And it's nice to see Liam and Mick here with us in the chamber today. Totally appreciate the enormous amount of work that they've put into producing the place plan, so just wanted to thank them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure your comments have been noted. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. I would echo Councillor Wilson's comments. I think one of the elements of place plans delivered in this way is that they're community-led, and I think certainly in Moffat there's been a very strong community leadership and engagement to drive this forward. So it's in front of us today. So and I fully endorse it, and I think we should respect that. I think Steve's comments earlier just about the place planning group with CPP, I'm just sort of wondering, there is something about the significance of these being led by the community means that we will have to be careful about how we give weight to these in a way that is not a generic place planning lens, because there'll be many communities don't have a place plan that's been led by the community and delivered in this way, but we might fall into institutional habits to maybe not see as clearly or give as much weight to locally led place plans, and I think that's maybe one of the worries. So when we do come up with LDP3, I would be grateful if the weight could be given in a planning context to place plans wherever that's appropriate. And I think that's part of the intention and part of the gain for local communities. But similarly, well, not similarly, but consequentially, when LDP4 comes along, what happens to those place plans? Do they exist in perpetuity, or is that another job for the community to refresh its own place plan? Because while there's a gain, I'm sort of thinking, if you roll this forward another 5 years, okay, how do you refresh those place plans? Because there's a danger that they either become embedded and not reviewed, and then fail to represent the changing needs of a community in the next 10 years, for example, or is that an onus then on the subsequent community councils and community groups to then say, well, we need to actually update that because X and Y has happened and that's kind of changed the dynamic. So I'm just sort of trying to future-proof this a little bit, and what thought's been given to that? Thank you.
Steve.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. And a couple of points there. As Councillor Thompson has said, one of the main advantages of this approach is it is very much community-led, and the community has ownership of the local place plans. And I would anticipate that as and when they get to a point where either a number of things have been delivered within the local place plan, or things have happened in the wider context, which mean that they're needing updated and refreshed, that would be driven through by the community itself. In terms of the tie-in with LDP4, so under the new legislation, LDPs now have a life cycle of 10 years, so there's quite a degree of longevity there attaching to LDP3 itself. So, yeah, in terms of LDP4, I would imagine when we get to that point, there will be a whole new suite of place-driven planning approaches that would need to be incorporated into LDP4, but that's speculating way into the future, Chair.
Thank you for that. I admire your forward thinking. I think you mentioned LDP5 as well. But Councillor Colours.
Thanks so much, Chair. My point coming on the back of what Councillor Johnson raised, and it's been touched on by other members since then. It's particularly around about I'd always seen local place plans as being an addendum to the local development plan, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10. But then you've got that question around about I suppose the longevity, how it's refreshed, is it up to date, so on and so forth. So Steve, I just wonder, is it an option to attach the whole piece of work in a whole, to say, okay, the council must take consideration of this or account of this as it in its planning policies? But it's not about planning policies. I think you spoke about that already. It could be actually about a community area, open space, attracting funding, but it could be affordable housing, it could be business units, it could be whatever. It's so many things that attach to a local place plan, but a number of them things definitely will be embedded or need to be embedded or taken account of within the local development plan, any local development plan as it comes forward. So could the whole document be attached to as an addendum, or will it just be referred to as part of a planning application if it came forward? Thank you, Chair.
Steve?
Chair, I think it's probably fair to say that we're still developing our approach in terms of the settlement level detail that's going to be evolved for LDP3. The other thing that I would point out is that the local place plans have got a very wide-ranging content, so quite rightly. So really the purpose in terms of the planning system is to pull out the planning related matters, because there should be lots in a place plan which is not directly relevant or related to planning. It could be related to healthcare, it could be related to any number of things which don't have a direct bearing on LDP3. So as I say, we are at the moment, unless Fraser or John have got any further insight into this, really evolving how we approach this at an individual settlement level and how we then translate that across into the draft of LDP3.
I'll develop to James. Will you go for it? I've got James I think, is it John?
It's Fraser.
Fraser. My apologies.
It's my second. Yeah, we haven't settled on a format for the next LDP, so there's no guarantee we'll have, the same settlements in the same way. The other point I'd make is there's a policy and process document that was approved by committee a couple of years ago, and it expands on the take into account element of the LPP. I won't read it out in full because it's 3 paragraphs, but the gist of it is Council approach LPP process in good faith and seek to incorporate LPP proposals to the extent that is practical. Where perceived difficulties occur, the Council will seek to engage with the community group at an early stage. So at the moment we've got a survey for sites and ideas, a call for sites and ideas, but we'll need to approach the communities that have produced their LPP, asking them about what's the best way for us to engage them and talk to them about the proposals in their LPP.
Thank you for that, Fraser. John, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, thanks, you, Chair.
Okay, does that answer your question?
It is. It's a really good answer, because if Councillor Johnson hadn't brought it up, it was a question in my head for a future seminar, so I think that's still where it lies. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Thompson, I'm hesitant.
Thanks, Chair. I will be brief, and it's just on the back of a point that Councillor Carruthers has raised, but I do think it's consistent and important. So one of the things that we are trying to consider with the development of LDP3 are the mechanisms by which we can create conditions, especially around the provision of services relating to larger developments, for example. And one of the issues we've had is we've had supplementary guidance which speaks about conditions relating to health and social care provision, but we've had no real mechanism by which to reasonably enforce that, because it's other partners that might deliver that. I'm just sort of conscious that some place plans, particularly I'm thinking of Moffat and just how the health provision is there at the moment, there's certainly priorities there about access to that and longevity and sustainability of it. So it would be helpful if we didn't discount the health element of place plans when we're considering LDP 3, because there might be creative ways that we can effectively tie that in a more meaningful way that is a positive impact for communities and helps us deliver better development. Thank you.
Fraser, I'm sure you'll take that into account. Thank you for that. I have no other speakers. Are members happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.4? Okay, members, I've been advised that lunch is here, but I think we'll be brave and try to go to item 9, and then we'll go to lunch after that. Item 9 is Local Development Plan 2 Supplementary Guidance Report by the Head of Economy and Development. This report advises members on the comments received to the consultation on the draft Gateway to Fleet Conservation Area Character Appraisal and Management Plan Supplementary Guidance, and the draft Wind Energy Landscape Sensitivity Study Supplementary Guidance. But Steve Rogers is available to take any questions on the report along with other officers as may be required. And I'll open that up to members. Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the report as well. Enjoyed the reading of it. There are only a couple of things I suppose I would like to pick up on, and got a view of the committee members too in regards to what their thoughts are, because I think, running about the Gatehouse of Fleet, the conservation area side of it, and when it talks about sustainable materials for windows, doors, so on and so forth, I am much of the view that we should be, in the best way we possibly can, but allowing plastic materials to be used. I think we need to make that explicit, but interested to see what other members are thinking, because as it stands, there's a reference against that from memory looking into it, but I think that should be supported, conservation listed or otherwise, taking into consideration extra U values, thermal values, I would say longevity. That's a statement in there that says that timber will last as long if it's well maintained. And I think that's some of the points that comes up very strongly from my constituents and residents for that matter, that are business owners too, sorry, that are struggling with buildings that are difficult to access, difficult places. And if you do maintain a timber sash and case window or timber door on an annual basis, you know, absolutely you get longevity out of them, to say the least. But the good thing about plastic is that you didn't have to set up scaffolds, access platforms and everything else and pay somebody to come and do that on an annual basis all the time. All you've got is a window cleaner, so to speak. So I think we have to move with the times and accommodate, especially with the difficult financial times. Not only Scotland sees it, Industries and Galloway, but perhaps we're heading for a worldwide, I think, financial crisis is what it feels like. The other part is the wind energy landscape sensitivity. It's study. I just wonder, how does that fit? And so what we're being asked, we're looking at a load of things and recommendations. We've got our boxes, so we've consulted, and it goes for both of these. We've got it consulted, our consultation response. We've been through the consultation, and we can see the response, and we can see what the council's anticipated response is to that. So we do see that. We see that in draft format. We've been asked to agree that. I'd like to see the whole document contained so you could actually see the final thing. But again, very open to hear what other members are saying in regards to that. So is it right we agree, as we always do, or normally do, I should say, is that, okay, we agree the recommendations, but don't see the final document, it's actually out there. But to actually read the final document with the amendments that are in place, I think it would make it easier for members to get a clearer understanding for both these items today. Some comments, Chair, maybe it's whether there's as much for members to get to stimulate their thoughts and get their responses, as well as officials. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. Steve, would you like to come in now?
Chair, thank you. Yes, I'll invite colleagues to respond to the more detailed parts of the question. But in terms of the revised text, I think it is attached to the appendix. So the revised draft, taking into account the changes and amendments that have been flagged up as part of the consultation process, is included. I'm looking at page 162, which is where the revised version of the Gatehouse of Fleet Conservation Area document starts. So highlighted in there are all the text changes that are proposed. I don't know if that is what Councillor Carruthers was suggesting.
I can come back and clarify if you want to.
Can you clarify that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm saying is, that's what we normally do. It's the normal way, and what we'll then see later on is the full document in all its glory, showing all the amendments that are incorporated. But we're seeing them in that boxed up version. So we're seeing them in isolation rather than within the whole document as we go through. No pressures about that. I'm just interested to see what. And I don't want to cause a bureaucratic or create a bureaucratic system, but we're seeing. And it's very much as draft format. We're not seeing the finalised document as it will be printed out. Thank you.
Steve, I've got three of your colleagues on. Who would you like me to defer to?
Well, we'll see who volunteers first.
Marie,
Chair,
I think you've been selected.
Yeah, sorry, I just literally have had to reconnect as well. So, okay, the table of normally what we do is actually we just present you with a table, and as you say, then the document has been amended and gone out according to whatever was agreed at committee. This time I did it slightly differently because I know there was a great deal of comment based on more or less what Councillor Carruthers has said, but there were other councillors commented at the original committee when the consultation document was agreed to go out. We've had a lot more input from public in the responses this time, and perhaps it isn't clear enough, but from May 2024, you do not need planning permission to change windows in a conservation area as long as the building isn't listed, and as long as you meet certain criteria for the front elevation and the principal elevation and road facing elevations. So the material is no longer required to be timber. if it's timber that's been taken out. But the opening and closing mechanism has to be the same as it is existing. So that's the first the part. So that is sort of covered, that part of Councillor Carruthers' concerns is covered by the change in the General Permitted Development Order, which has been done by the Scottish Government. So that applies to all conservation areas, but does not apply to listed buildings. I hope I have taken on the points that have been made about energy efficiency and about the renewable energy generation within the conservation area, and hopefully that helps with the other points that have been raised. So if I've missed anything, just please ask again.
Councillor Carruthers.
No, excellent. I mean, I read that information that was in there, Mizzy, so I really do appreciate that. It was a good report. I did enjoy reading this. I do enjoy reading this kind of stuff. But and that's why I mentioned at the beginning, listed buildings and so on and so forth. I went beyond just the conservation areas. But no, happy with the report. It's just to stimulate debate amongst members, and really glad to see that difference for the Scottish Government coming forward in regards to material change. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, I think you indicated to speak.
Thanks, Chair. It's largely been answered, but I think I do have a sympathy with Councillor Carruthers in regard to listed buildings and energy efficiency measures that are affordable, easily replaced, and whether it's a composite or a PVC material. I would give the emphasis in those cases to the appearance rather than the material, because I think the energy efficiency is probably of a higher priority. And for people living in homes, whether they own them or rent them, it's much less of an anxiety knowing that it's easily and readily done, rather than what can be a very complicated and daunting process for people who maybe don't feel they're easily capable of having things restored in a sort of listed building fashion. So I've got sympathy for Councillor Carruthers on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. I think as the years progress, I think the materials available have now probably changed from quite a number of years ago. My mind goes back to a development in Kirkcudbright, where I think almost 120 windows were presented, and I think they actually came here to a planning committee, or they brought the windows here, and it was very, very difficult to tell the difference between wood and any other material. But I think that's well noted. Thank you for that. I have no other speakers. In that case, if we could go to the recommendations, and members happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.6.
Is it okay if I get one more small question? I should have asked it first.
You should have asked it earlier, but I'll allow it to go here.
Yes, it's a small technical one because it talks about the wind energy landscape sensitivity study, and some people have mentioned, I think, could have been Gatehouse of Fleet Community Council, or maybe a John Bailey, I forget it, but it's right. It's in the contained within the papers. So some people have got the view, listen, enough's enough. We've got enough of these, but it was made quite clear actually this is not the place within the document. This is not the place to have that level of discussion. It's actually LDP3. So I wondered if we could just got some clarity in regards to that, because I thought, like the Dumfries and Galloway wind farm landscape capacity study, this was similar, and it might have bottomed it out. So a wee bit of confusion for me there, but if we get clarity in regards to that, please, cheers. I see Shona nodding at least, so I think she's got a grasp of what I'm saying. Thank you.
I think we have Fraser as well. Fraser, Shona?
Yep.
Fraser.
Yes, the landscape sensitivity study is an update of the capacity study, so it plays a similar role. So it will help our colleagues dealing with applications. It provides more up-to-date context in terms of the larger turbines we're seeing. But for LDP, we've made the point that the landscape sensitivity is solely focused on landscape. Wider planning matters will need to be considered at LDP. What LDP guidance says is that the LDP should have a spatial framework that identifies the range of opportunities for renewable energy.
Thank you for that. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Oh, I can't get off mute. No, thanks, Chair. I think Fraser's covered that very well. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, I'm going to the recommendations. Are members happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.6? In that case, we'll adjourn for lunch. If we come back at 1 o'clock, would that suit everybody? Thank you. food law audit and community protection capacity issue, the report by the Head of Economy and Environment. Following on from the 5th of November 2024 meeting of this committee, members are asked to consider and note the Food Standards Scotland audit report on the Council's capability and capacity to deliver its statutory food law duties. This also includes the action plan that has been agreed with the Food Standards Scotland. The report outlines the wider context of the increased demands on the Community Protection Service and the work being undertaken to identify and address resulting resorting pressures. It's important to remember that we have a committed and dedicated team that are being stretched by the increased demands being placed on them. We have Steve Rogers available to take any questions on the report together with other officers as may be required. I'll open that up to members. Councillor John Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose this is a timely reminder of some of the pressures our staff face, in particular 4.2 in the report, where it says that the audit found that we had 2 full-time equivalent appropriately qualified and authorised officers working on food law enforcement, meaning that there were 1,488 food premises per full-time employment, which is significantly more than the Scottish average of 355. That is pretty huge in my view. And I also welcome the action plan in the appendix to try and mitigate some of those issues that we've got. There was one particular item in the action plan. I can just find the page number 255. It's number 2 there. The authorities should ensure that it has a contingency plan in place to deal with exceptional circumstances. And it says in the planned actions right at the very bottom that this will be reviewed to ensure it is still current. I'm just wondering where we are at this moment in time on that review, or is it still to take place? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, and it is noted that, especially with the food outlet, that we are well above the national average. The Vice, we had a visit to the team just 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they're committed. They're disappointed at the audit, but they made it clear that they're not at fault for the audit. It's the increased demand being placed on the service and the difficulty in recruiting. But the action plan's well underway. Sandra, would you like to make any comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, in relation to the action plan that Councillor Campbell pointed out there and the review that was taking place, that was a review, just a desktop review by myself of our internal business continuity arrangement through our business impact analysis and vulnerability assessment, just to make sure, because we did it as a group, as a team effort in 2023, just to make sure that what we had classified then as the highest priority of activities that we should be doing if our business continuity plan had to be triggered, just to make sure that that was still current. And that did include food law enforcement, which means that, you know, if we were down to the barest minimum of staff or resources, then food law enforcement would still continue. So that review has been done, and yet obviously that should still be a high priority if we have to trigger that plan.
Thank you for that. Steve, is there anything you'd like to come in now?
Nothing to add at the moment, Chair, thanks.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, I welcome that response, and I'd just like to put on record my thanks, you know, the effort the staff have been putting in over the years. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Sandra, I'm sure you'll pass that back to the staff, our support for them. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and wing this one, which could go either way. But I've noticed recently, in 2.2 here, we note the wider community protection capacity issues. One of the biggest issues I've heard recently is rats in the town centre, and how that is reported and dealt with. And I do wonder if when you look on the council's page, if we need a bit more clarity on who's actually responsible for the treatment of that, because the amount of people that I've had that have been told that they need to pay £70 to have somebody come and remove the rats when in actual fact they're living in the drains. I wondered if maybe we could get some clarity on that. Thank you.
Sandra, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you. We are actually updating our web pages at the moment as part of the corporate update. Because of the corporate update, we've not really actually paid a lot of attention to some of our more informative web pages, and that's certainly one of them. So I will take that on board and ensure that when we get the new refreshed web pages up, which is going to be in the next few days, that will be included so that there's more clarity for the public.
Thank you. Does that answer your comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just, you know, if people are expected to pay this £70 or, you know, they feel they need to pay this £70, then I wonder if it's actually making the problem worse from under-reporting, and this is why we're now dealing with what seems to be a bit of an issue, especially around the town. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Donald.
Thank you, Chair. Just to repeat what you've said, this is not about the staff. My comments are not about the staff who do a fantastic job against somewhat challenging odds at the moment. But we probably knew what we knew before the October 24 audit, and it's concerning that the action plan's only coming out now. We have 151 food manufacturing and packing premises in the region, and our status as key logistical hub and trading gateway linking Scotland to England and Northern Ireland are potentially being put at risk due to the 1,675 interventions that were missed between 2022 and 2025, and a further 320 projected to be missed for 24-25. I do respect what you said about the competing demands on the service due to post-Brexit issues, disease incident management and internal factors such as a restructure, which are actually contained in the report. But the report itself is quite clear and unambiguous in terms of what it's saying. So pleased to see an action plan, really good to see that. But what it doesn't contain is a progress report. So what we have here is, you know, here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to do it, but there's no progress, there's no updates on how it's being done. And if there's any issues, any challenges, any whatever there. So could it be perhaps amended to include a progress update in the action plan and any slippage that might be happening? Because it's not evident that it's not there at the moment. It'd be really useful. Given the potential seriousness of this and potential serious crisis on our hands, could I suggest as an action that we also remit this to the Audit Risk and Scrutiny Committee to enable a deep dive into this matter and to provide an additional belt and braces oversight to this matter for the Council? Thank you.
Your first point about reviewing it, I think any project going ahead should have a review structure put in. That's only we're going to improve on it. And you're quite right in saying that a lot of these issues are not new. A lot of these issues have go back quite a few years back into previous administrations as well. So I think it's only right that we do take responsibility for that, and we're acting on it. As far as reviewing to Audit Risk and Scrutiny, I think my understanding is that although we can self-refer, that could be called in at any time should that be required. But it's maybe a bit early at this stage when we do have a very definite action plan and we are moving forward on that. And I think you're right as far as review. I think we must have a review structure built into that, and I'm quite sure that could be included. Defer to the Director, do you have a view on that one?
Yeah, I think that in terms of the broader actions, they'll also get built into the 25-26 service plan as well, in terms of the monitoring that will come back to this committee.
Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm not going to push for the Audit Risk and Scrutiny at the moment, but can we have an assurance that that's going to happen in terms of the service plan going forward, please, in terms of the reviews?
It's something, should it be required, I think it could be appropriate, as in any other decision that this or any other committee could make. But we do have an identified action plan, and providing that's carried out and we monitor that, and I think it's important that it is reported frequently back to this committee as the parent committee. Sandra, do you want to make any comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, and reflecting on what the Director had said there about having this in the service plan, yet of course that would be possible to go forward. One thing we won't be able to do, as far as I'm aware, is change this action plan because it's already been agreed with Food Standards Scotland as part of their audit follow-up. And that was a requirement, and the normal procedure for them is that they agree with the officers. We sat down round the table and had a discussion backwards and forwards until they were happy with what we had in it. So it was for them to agree with us, the action plan, and that's already been agreed. If members should wish us to go back to the FSS and try to change that, we can do that. But I think the way forward would be to address that in the service plan.
Yeah, I think my understanding was it wasn't really to change the action plan, it was just to put in a review mechanism, which I think is appropriate. Where it's an agreed plan, and I think, yes, we'll be tied into that agreed plan, that should we look at the situation and find we want to extend to that or extend the remit of it, I think that would only be appropriate, probably by agreement, but it's certainly something we keep in mind. Councillor Donald, did I answer your point there before you asked it?
You actually answered my point. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Sandra. With Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The question I would ask is how many times are these premises, food premises, actually checked per annum? And also, a second point to that is a number of food outlets now are having their food delivered by people in cars, cyclists, whatever. But a lot of these bags you see coming out of these premises are pretty grimy and pretty worn. I don't know if the environment has anything to do with that. And lastly, I feel it should be the way that England does it. They have notices in their windows with points marking up to a certain degree to say how well they're doing. That's something that maybe would increase their working ability to get things and keep food clean. Thank you.
I think the report actually accepts the fact that due to the number of premises that we have, that the amount of checks or the frequency of checks has not been up to the level, and that was the whole part of the audit or the audit review, but that is something that we are actively looking in for. I don't think it would be quite difficult to give you specific numbers at this stage. We could probably do that in the review stage when we look back on how effective we've been in this action plan. And the other points made about a point system, I'm quite sure that Sandra could consider that. It might not be a priority at this stage, but it's something that could be considered for the future. Sandra, would you want to come in on that?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, in respect to the point system, I know what Councillor Slater is referring to, and that is an English system. In Scotland, it's a Food Hygiene Information Scheme, and they don't work, or we don't work with points. It's purely a pass or a fail. So it's perhaps not as good because it doesn't rate it, and perhaps the English system is better, but we're bound with the Food Standards Scotland system that's there, which is either pass or fail currently.
Thank you for that. Councillor Thompson, I see you're absent in person, but you're online. Over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was more, I put my hand up and then put it down again because the question's kind of been covered, but it was just, obviously, I think we would, as in terms of audit risk and scrutiny, members of that committee will happily consider anything that's referred across. I think that normally the first protocol would be that's kind of management response and business plan arrangements and how we would then monitor that, but it's always open to members there, so if Councillor Dorwood wants to raise that, that's absolutely fine, and we'd obviously consider it. There's a number of different things that we have to choose between because obviously resources in terms of audit and scrutiny reviews are limited, but absolutely welcome to consider that at the Audit Risk and Scrutiny Committee at the appropriate juncture. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Dorward's accepted that point. That it may very well come back to that as any other particular report that comes to, or body that comes before us. I have no other questions at this point. I don't. Are members happy to agree the recommendation at 2.1 to 2.3? Okay. If we go to item 11, Dumfries Conservation Area and Regeneration Scheme, an update. This report seeks to update members on the progress of the Dumfries Conservation Area Regeneration Scheme since the recruitment of a new project officer. We've got Steve Rogers is available to take any questions on the report, along with other officers that may be required. I'll open this up to members. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I'm pleased to see that progress has been being made. It seems to have been a bit of a long time coming, but we are actually getting there. I've spoken to some of the people who have been applying for this grant, and there's definite issues about getting the appropriate number of quotations from, and it's mentioned the difficulty in finding contractors for these heritage buildings. So I wonder if what progress is being made to bring that on board, or is there other ways of going about it? I raised a question about one of the projects where at one point they could only actually get one quote and they needed 3. And is there an opportunity to bring in a QS or something to clarify whether the quote is reasonable or not, if they can't get the required number of quotes to get the work carried out? And also, some of the buildings have been sat in this programme for long enough, so I more than welcome the fact that we're actually prepared to look at some of the reserved projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, welcome to the project and welcome to this committee. Do you want to respond on that, or will I hand over to Steve? Go to you first, Will.
Yeah, happy to respond. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Johnson, as well. So obviously there are a few questions raised there, and obviously I want to first go to, you talked about the tendering issue, and that is something that I've looked to address since starting the project. As previously, what has been done is a skills audit, and that's found that the lack of contractors that specialise in heritage work is a real issue here in Dumfries. So I'm looking to follow on from the recommendations from that report. So we're now able to look at how we can help people who are wanting to use, say, a traditional joiner, someone who has line work skills and have access through maybe a database. So that's something we're looking to develop with the Crichton Trust in the future, so it's easier for people to understand who to go to when these issues arise. I've also spoken to Historic Environment Scotland around this issue as well. And as you mentioned, the hire of a QS is a way to get around this, as they can independently assess tenders moving forward to make sure that they're, of the correct quality. And a lot of that goes back to HES themselves, as they need these tender reports to be very specific, as they're very conscious of their funding being spent and how it is spent in line with conservation practices.
Thank you for that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. But the overarching point of it is it's great to see that things are moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 260. It's 4.6, the project at 51 Bank Street. Now, I just visited a brand new housing estate. They built 43 houses, really good quality houses, and the cost of that was 4.6 million for 43 houses. Now we come down to some of this work in the town, in Mid-Steeple, 7 flats cost over £8 million. Now I feel that if there's any more work to go on like that, that has to be seriously looked at, because 8 flats and 43 houses, there's no comparison there. That's way over the top. So as regarding town centre building work, if there's any more grants available, that should be well looked into as a business plan, what it's going to cost, because that is far too much really to spend on new flats. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Slater. I think, you know, that's a good issue to address. Is the price of construction has definitely spiraled over the past few years, and that's, you know, multiple variables have impacted that. I myself, in terms of Mid-Steeple Quarter, I'm doing everything I can, and I'm waiting for them to finalise other projects before moving forward with their grant that they want to use for 51 Bank Street. But ultimately, it's up to them to come to me when they're ready.
Thank you for that. We have Councillor Thompson.
No, it must be a false positive, Chair. I don't think of apologies if my hand's still up.
Councillor John Campbell.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, I welcome this report. I also welcome the Old Linen Bank being added to the priority projects, and I also welcome that if funding isn't being used, that it gets redistributed, particularly in 4.4, where 8 English Street property has been supported since the beginning of the DCARs through progression, although progression has stalled in late 2024. But it does say that should the survey find that the project could no longer go ahead, and then the grant funds would be reallocated. But the survey was planned for the end of January 2025. It may be just a little bit early to get an update on that, but if there is, it would probably be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to join that survey a couple of weeks ago, and the building is in a bit of an interesting state, to say the least. But conversations so far have been really positive with the surveyors firm that have been hired to take over the project. And I am feeling overwhelmingly positive that the project can move forward. But in the nature of these schemes, it's important to be flexible. And if things do come ahead and maybe there's no viable option, reallocating those funds to other projects that are also in need to, you know, better their chances of feasibility is something we have to account for.
Thank you, Councillor Dorbert.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report. This does have quite a good valuable echo what Councillor Johnston said in terms of it's laudable, the work that's being done to progress. And part of the thing we need to remember, I think, here is the desire to reinvigorate and regenerate our town centre. I'm talking about Dumfries specifically. Slight parochialism on my part here, but, you know, in a different way, to actually improve the footfall even, and don't mention the football, and get more people in, which will regenerate the economy. So I think the work that's being done is fantastic, and congratulate you on that. Perhaps the one small concern is the ability to engaging stakeholders seems to be good, but it's actually continuing that engagement so that people don't drop off the edge. It's a challenge, isn't it? So how can we assist you? Is there anything we can do as a council to assist you to do something about that? Thank you.
Steve,
I think that...
sorry. Yeah, I'll come back to you, Will. Okay. Steve, is this something you'd like to comment on?
No, Chair, thank you very much. I'm very happy to allow Will to continue to answer the questions.
A little bit eager there, Steve. Sorry. Yeah, it's a good question you raised there. And I think if we go back to mid-2024, when the previous officer was out of the role, it showed that lack of continuation in, you know, speaking to stakeholders can really slow a project up. As when I did come to start the role, a lot of people who were initially involved had forgot what was going on, essentially. And it's quite important that people are constantly reminded. And I'm on the coattails of as many people who are after these grants, because we do have a deadline of 2026 September to have these projects completed. So I'm just ringing people up day by day to make sure that they are, reminded of my existence.
Right, thank you for that. Councillor Dorbert, do you want to come back in?
Thanks, Chair. I'm encouraged by your enthusiasm. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all are. And we look forward to future reports. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I have no other questions. If we go to the recommendations, our members agreed to the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.3. Okay. We go to item 12, Standing Order 16.2, Support for Independent Traders, George Street, Stranraer. Under Council Standing Order 16.2, Councillor Willie Scobie requested that elected members consider the establishment of a compensation scheme for the traders in the vicinity of the Council's Capital Works project on the site of the former George Hotel in Stranraer. This request was considered as required by the standing orders, and it was determined that the submission of this report is appropriate for the consideration of the committee. This request was also supported by the Vice Chair and local members at Wigton Area Committee on the 4th of November 2024. Following discussions with myself as the Chair and the Vice Chair, officers have developed an alternative proposal to provide support to the traders in Stranraer. We've got Steve Rogers is available to take any questions on the report along with other officers as required. The Councillor Scobie has asked me to allow him to address the committee, and I understand he's now free to do so. I'll defer to Councillor Scobie, and then I'll open it up to members for questions. Councillor Scobie.
Thanks, Chair, and apologies for any inconvenience I may have caused earlier. I managed to get back from the meeting I couldn't get out of. Could I also thank the officers for bringing forward the report as you stated under 16.2, and you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak to the report as one of the local members. I just want to address some of the issues within the report, turning to 4.1, recognising the period when restoration work started in Stranraer Museum, followed by the works to retain the facade of the George Hotel. But there was work well before this date, going back a number of years, and maybe before COVID lockdowns, when the facade at the George Hotel had to be reinforced. It would probably have fallen down. Church Street had been closed off to allow the scaffolding work to remain, and the remainder closed from that time onward. I would say to suggest the problem with the traders only started with Church Street closing in August 2023 is actually incorrect and could be misleading. Turning to 4.2 of the paragraph 4.2 of the report, I would point out that the Council's responsibility for the safety of the public is not under dispute, as indeed Church Street has always been open to pedestrians throughout the whole time of the closure, and that's a matter of fact. What I would reiterate and reinforce is the diversionary route that has been had a negative effect on the traders adjacent to the work being carried out in on the George Hotel and then the museum. Vehicles and drivers would not use the diversionary route of Upson Street and then down High Street if they could avoid it. And this is the same for Queen Street, that they would avoid that as well because of the construction work that has gone on throughout the period and with the obstructions that have been placed on George Street. I'm sure you all know Church Street is a major arterial route for traffic accessing the town shopping area, and George Street going on to Charlotte Street, which at one time was the main shopping fair in Stranraer. There is no doubt in my mind the closure of Church Street has had a negative impact on the traders adjacent to the works that went on to the George Hotel and then the museum, affecting their footfall and income. 4.5 details of the tramworks that went on in Edinburgh and how it affected the traders in Edinburgh and Leith. It describes how the businesses from the city centre to Leith experienced disruption for 2 years. And I would put to the committee, this is no different to the disruption being experienced by the traders in Stranraer. And I for a longer period than 2 years, as identified in Edinburgh. Any reports or press articles I have read refer to Edinburgh City Council having paid out compensation for the loss of trade to businesses affected by the tramworks, and I see no difference with the closure of Church Street other than a higher number of years of disruption and loss of trades for the traders in Stranraer. 4.6, I would say the compensation scheme set out by Edinburgh City Council has set that precedence, and I would hope that the committee would recognise that. However, as the committee are not with me on that, then I would hope it will agree to a support scheme for business, as long as any support scheme does compensate for the traders' losses who have been affected by Church Street closure. But in conclusion, Chair, I just would say that the Council could still be open to legal challenge, as the report identified, by advising them to seek their own legal advice, which I thank the officers for. All I would say in conclusion is traders are facing the prospect of closure, and I know of one being the wee woolly man looking at the possibility of having to close because of the downturn in trade, footfall and everything else is income. I hope the committee will look on this report favourably and come up with a scheme that will compensate the loss to the traders. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Scobie. Before I open it up to the remainder of members, I think in recognition of the comments that you made, I think we've looked into this in great detail and taken legal advice on it. I would hate to think if you take albeit there's not many traders around Interfloor, but I would hate that any project would be delayed because of a fear of having to present compensation for any particular scheme for traders that might affect in the area. We had to react to the situation, quite rightly react to the situation in Stranraer, and hence the reason that the project is at the level it's at. I do appreciate your opinion. It's certainly not my opinion that we should be presenting compensation, and I think that is supported by legal opinion as well. I'll open it up to members and see any particular views. Steve, is there anything that you would like to add at this stage?
Chair, there's nothing really to add at this point. Happy to take any questions from members.
Okay, I'll open it up to members. Councillor Slater.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. It's regarding compensation schemes for traders. If when the scheme on the sands goes ahead, will the traders there, be allowed compensation?
Can I make it clear at this stage that we're not, right now, we're not discussing a compensation scheme. This is a business support scheme.
Well, any support really for the traders, really, if you want to word it that way. Thank you.
Steve, would you like to answer that one? That in future, that should it be required, is this something that we could possibly roll out to other projects, for example, the White Sands project?
Chair, thank you, and thank you for the question. So the intention here is to develop a support scheme for businesses trading and operating within that particular locality in Stranraer. And partly it's in recognition also of the aims and ambitions and aspirations of the Stranraer Place Plan to see revitalisation of the town centre and business and premises within the town centre. So there is a context also locally, and I think the report does set out our intention to regard this as a bit of a pilot, a bit of a trial run, to see if that type of heavily focused support to an individual cluster of small traders can have a beneficial impact on the kind of future trading and future vitality and viability of those businesses. So it's very much the intention to look to replicate this approach in other towns alongside areas where there are activities underway which are really aimed at stimulating and promoting small business activity and small trade activity. I suppose the distinction to be made here is that what Councillor Slater has referred to is a flooding event, which is something quite different to what we're talking about here in terms of introducing a targeted business support scheme, certainly having taken advice from legal services and also looked in terms of precedent and risk. There is no obligation at all on the council to, through its insurers, to pay out in those sorts of circumstances. Just wanted to make that clear. Stuart, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add in terms of how the scheme would be delivered and how we could learn and apply that learning elsewhere.
Stuart, just before you come in there, in relation to the White Sands, I think Councillor Slater may have been referring to a possible flooding event. I think he was also referring to should the works progress on the White Sands flood protection scheme. It was more down that line with a view to extending the scheme. I appreciate we're not talking about that today, that we're talking about the funding we have available for this particular project.
Yes, I mean, that may well, Chair, be the type of circumstances in terms of kind of development and disruption within the wider area that could trigger such an intervention like we're proposing for Stranraer. Yes.
Thank you. Stuart, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I think just one further point to make is that both and Steve referred to the Stranraer Place Plan and its ambitions to see stimulation of a more enterprising town centre in Stranraer with lots more independent traders, lots more activity, lots more footfall. And one of the key outcomes that the George Hotel project itself is trying to do is also to stimulate footfall. So part and parcel of realising the benefits of that major capital investment is to try and ready the local business community and local traders in the vicinity of that project to best take advantage of that when it opens. So it's a scheme which has that double objective of broader town centre regeneration, but actually helping us to deliver on the outcomes and benefits that we hope the George Hotel will that project will bring to the town, and that we've signed up to essentially in terms of the grant funding package from the UK government.
Thank you for that. Councillor John Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to thank Councillor Scobie for bringing this report. I do have a couple of reservations in the report. I have no issues with supporting businesses when they're being affected in any way, whether it's here or anywhere else. And I do recognise that this is actually a pilot scheme just at the moment. But if we look at implications and risks on page 71, it's going to require up to 80,000 to implement. So is that over and above what will be paid out in grants? And on page 270, going on to page 271, which is the figure 1, there's a number of bullet points, that businesses to get access to these grants would have to fulfil. One of the points that I wanted to raise was, and I think Steve probably mentioned it, about insurance. I mean, normally when you have a business, you would have business to cover loss of earnings or, things like that. I'm just wondering if these bullet points could be maybe improved a little bit, just to make sure that businesses, before even asking for a grant, that they check with their insurance that they're covered anyway, and maybe they would get money that way. Thanks.
Okay, I think most of the businesses have probably gone through that and also through the council's insurance as well. But I'll pass it over to Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just invite Stuart to come in and address that.
Thanks, Steve. So on the point about the financial implications and the sum that's mentioned at section 6 of the report, that's an all-inclusive cost. So that's the grants plus any overheads that would be incurred. That's generally what we're assuming will be what we need to cover potentially the sort of dozen traders that we think could have an interest in this. So that's our sort of round figure for that. And we, yes, in the table above, at the end of section 4, where we put the some of the guidance there for just in terms of the bullet points, in terms of who might be eligible, we're trying to keep this relatively accessible as well, and just to come up with a set of criteria that keeps the scheme accessible but is quite clear about certain key principles of it. So we're talking about small independent traders that are as I say, the independence bit of this is the important part of it, and that the majority of their revenue comes from passing footfall. That's the other important point, because what we're trying to do is drive footfall into the town centre and it stimulates that vitality and of the streets, etc. So hopefully it's a core set of criteria that if we run the scheme in Stranraer and are minded to come back and roll it out elsewhere in other circumstances, we'll have learnt some lessons through this as well.
Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. No, I appreciate the response, but in particular on the insurance, you mentioned there was 12 traders affected. Have all 12 traders actually applied through their insurance? Have we any knowledge of that?
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Well, not specific knowledge of that. We've held some meetings with those traders where we've given them guidance about what they should be doing themselves and what legal advice they should be taking through their own lawyers. I would sort of put insurers under that umbrella as well. So we've given them that guidance from the outset as well.
Thank you. I have another 2 speakers. Before I go to that, I think, although it's not explicit in the recommendations, when we do come to the recommendations, I think we should have, like any other scheme, built in to receive a further report and an update on how we're progressing and the update, including the uptake. I think that's important. But if we could go to Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Yep, you preempted me on that one. I was going to make that very point as well. I think we need to know if we are to agree to 2.3, we need to know what impact that might have. First of all, I would sort of go back a stage and say, absolutely, I think we should be doing everything possible to support businesses in Stranraer. I think there's been significant investment in the west of the region, specifically in Stranraer. We're really ambitious for Stranraer. So, we can only realise that ambitious if we take our community and business owners with us. So I think anything we can do to support that has got to be welcomed. But we do have to be mindful of where we are. And certainly looking at 2.3, there's reference of a pilot, but then it uses the words trial and initiative. I think we need to be really clear. Is this a pilot project, that's a sort of standalone pilot project, or is it an ad hoc trial? My concern is if whatever we agree here, to leave us potentially vulnerable for future projects that people and businesses might say, well, you did a trial there, we'd like that repeated, just so that we're tight on what we're actually agreeing today and what any potential unintended consequences might be of that. I do wonder if this is a successful venture, whatever we decide, are we going to come back and then build it into policy for going forward? I think we need to know that if we are going to take forward, if a pilot or trial is successful, are we able to apply for funding for future projects for potential mitigation of these issues that the traders in Stranraer have experienced? And is there an option even now? Is that something that we potentially should have looked at in reflection in terms of funding for the projects to build that into our business cases and support going forward? My final sort of comment question is in regards to the page 271 in terms of implication and risks. And references that they anticipated of this, and it refers to a pilot rather than a scheme, of up to £80,000 from the Business Recovery Grants Fund. I'm just wondering, where's that Business Recovery Grants Fund actually reported on? Because we had the revenue monitoring and the capital, and I couldn't see it. Apologies if I've missed it. Is it reported? How much funding do we have in that pot? Who's eligible for it? What are the criteria? I'm just not familiar with it, and apologies if that's been reported elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that one. In relation to your last point, this element of it, I think it should be reported through ourselves. But the scheme, the pot that you're talking about, yes, we could pass that over and ask that to be explained. You mentioned the similarities between pilot and trial, which suggests they're probably the same thing. I think it would be too early at this stage to start looking at how we could expand it. I think we've got to get the effectiveness and just assess how effective it has been in future. And it may very well be something we can plan for. But I think to go down the lines of planning to expand it already is just a bit early. But I'll pass it over to Steve.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll deal with the last of those points first, if that's okay, and then I'll bring Stuart in to address some of the other matters raised by Councillor Hagman. So the fund that's referred to here is essentially residual money from the support schemes for business that were funded by UK government during the pandemic. There is a residual balance sitting in there, and it's held in a service reserve. So the way in which service reserves are reported back to members is through the budget monitoring process. So we can certainly pick that up and maybe introduce some narrative into the next budget monitoring report just to highlight that particular point. And I'll ask Stuart to pick up the other points. Chair, thank you.
Stuart.
Yes, and thanks for your questions, Councillor Hagman. And yes, I think the purpose of this particular approach, whether we call it a trial or a pilot, is to learn some lessons about what we're trying to do and apply here. And the previous conversation, we absolutely agreed that the right thing to do would be to come back to committee following the conclusion of that to present what the lessons were and what the effectiveness of the scheme has been, and to think through where else and what benefits might be delivered from replicating projects such as this, or grant schemes such as this, in other situations across the region. It is, of course, non-capital spend, so it's a tricky one to sort of account for within normal capital project planning. But that's one of the things we would have to have a look at, and this is why we've all taken this opportunity of the funds that Steve has mentioned to be able to at least do this particular piece of work in Stranraer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hagman, I see your hand still
up. Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. I will put it down, but it would be useful to know how much funds are in that residual amount. It would be useful to know if officers have that. So we're being asked, or we're being informed that we can take £80,000 out of that fund. How much is available in total? Thank you.
Steve, could you answer that one just now?
Chair, thank you. I don't have that information to hand, and we will provide that information to members either after the committee or as part of the next revenue monitoring report update, Chair.
I think it'd probably be an advantage if you can advise members of the committee when you get that information. Okay, I have Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. We commend this report and the sentiments behind it, ably argued by Councillor Scobie, as usual. Supportive in principle, it's clearly described as a business support scheme, not a compensation scheme, which is reassuring. And from reading the report, it appears a proportionate and legitimate response to the challenges the business people in this area find themselves. So that's great. Also contributes to the regeneration of the lovely town of Stranraer, which is great as well. And I'm reassured by the caveats contained in legal implications on page 271, as I'm sure our legal team has robustly scrutinised this as well. So I'm happy to support. Yes, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. I have no other registered speakers. If we go to the recommendations, are members happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.3? Members agree? Right, go to item 13, community asset transfer, former caravan park, Glasgow Road, Lockerbie. This report presents to members a community asset transfer application for a 10-year lease from the RH Youth Organisation for the transfer of land at the former caravan site, Glasgow Road, Lockerbie, DG 11 2AR, under the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015. The report includes the recommendations of the Lockerbie and Lochmaben Common Good Subcommittee, who considered the application at their meeting on the 15th of January 2025. We've got Harry Hayes available to take any questions on the report, along with other officers as may be required. Is there any, Harry, is there anything you'd like to add to the report? No. No. We have Stephen in Harry's place. Stephen?
Nothing to add, Chair, thank you.
Okay, I'll open this up to members. Councillor Crawlers.
Happy to kick it off, Chair. So I watched the whole of Lockerbie and Lochmaben Common Good Committee in full. It was really busy actually when you seen a lot of discussion in regards to this. I think the social return was discussed heavily, along with the wider community use in particular, which I totally agreed with because I know this area well. I grew up in and around this area, so I've been working there recently and met a lot of people there just by sheer chance. And anyways, I agreed entirely with what was saying really about the social return, the community use that is existing and the impact it would have on the local people in that area. And I felt the recommendations coming from that particular committee after the really extended discussion was the correct one, and I would agree with them and fully support them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. Having read it, I would agree with the reasons and recommendations in the Lockerbie, Lochmaben Common Good Subcommittee. It is streamed and able to watch bits of it, which took place on the 15th of January. So I'd move option 3 at 4.17, which is agreed up to transfer, is adopted by the Council. Thank you. By this committee, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, option 3 seems the appropriate route, in my view, taking into consideration the Common Good Subcommittee's decision. The only one that I would disagree with in the points 4.16.5, breaches of current lease does not engender confidence that the public access will be maintained should the CAT request be agreed. I think that could really be taken out and just agree all the other points that the Common Good Subcommittee have proposed in this report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that. Do we, any other members wishing to speak? Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. It's just it's a typo at 4.16.4, possibly my fault. Lockerbie is not a royal borough, so if we can change that recommendation to Borough of Lockerbie. Thank you.
Thank you for your geographic advice. Any other members? If we go to the recommendations in that case, are members happy to agree the recommendation at 2.1 to 2.5 with the option 3 is shown as page 284?
Is that with the removal of 16 point?
Sorry?
Sorry, I'm taking that out.
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Campbell asked.
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Campbell asked that 4.16.5 be removed in the reasons. Are we agreeing with that? Are we all content to?
Are members agreed to that exclusion? Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that, members. Item 14, any other business deemed urgent? I have none, so a safe journey home. Thank you.